Rain falls, washing away the last remnants of youth. Am I just a backup plan to you? Sang Yan's voice cuts through the downpour, raw and desperate. If youth was a spark of hope and love, then for Sang Yan, it was extinguished that night. The girl before him, once his entire world, now speaks words that sever the bond they once shared. I really don't like you coming to see me so frequently. I hope you'll stop coming from now on. Silence. The weight of rejection lingers. Pride shatters. Memories fracture. Sang Yan grips his resolve. Don't worry, I won't pester you anymore. With that final promise, two figures once intertwined in fate take separate steps forward, away from each other, away from what once was. 6 years later, the morning sun spilling through the blinds. A phone rings. Wen Yi Fan groans, half buried under blankets. Wen Yi Fan, you're not out of bed yet? It's 2 p.m.? Zhang Ziqiao's teasing voice jolts her awake. I slept late, Yi Fan murmurs. Watched a horror movie, then my drunk neighbor knocked all night. Again? Just move already. Yi Fan sighs. I'll move when my lease is up. Ziqiao changes the subject. Forget that. Come out tonight. I'll set you up with a guy. I'd rather work overtime. That won't cost me a penny. Ziqiao laughs. Who said you need money? Just use your eyes. See you at Duoluo Street. At night, two young women, Zhang Ziqiao and Wen Yi Fan, navigate the lively crowd, their eyes gleaming with excitement as they spot their destination, overtime, a bar with an unassuming exterior. Wen Yi Fan raises an eyebrow, skeptical. This is the bar you said we'd meet someone at? It looks more like a hair salon. Ziqiao dismisses her doubts with a grin. That's not the point. The owner is the legendary handsome star of Duoluo Street. The women settle at a table, scanning the room. Maybe it's the bartender, Yi Fan muses, nodding toward a polite young man in uniform. Ziqiao scoffs. Him? No way! And Ziqiao's eyes widen. Wait, look over there! A tall, dark-haired man leans against the bar, his sharp gaze scanning the room. The bartender greets him with a teasing smile. The realization hits Wen Yi Fan like a thunderbolt. Sang Yan? Yi Fan, caught in a whirlwind of emotions, barely registers her friend's words. Ziqiao reminds her. He was your classmate before you transferred. Didn't he pursue you at some point? Before she can respond, Sang Yan turns and their eyes meet. Their moment was cut short by the crash of a drink spilling onto her clothes by the waiter. She excused herself, heading toward the restroom, trying to compose herself. Inside the restroom, she tried to wipe the stain from her cardigan, but it wouldn't come off. With a sigh, she stepped out, holding it in her hand, only to come to an abrupt halt. Sang Yan was standing there, a cigarette dangling loosely from his fingers, the smoke curling into the air between them. She willed herself to move, to walk past him like he was just another stranger. But her thoughts betrayed her. He probably doesn't recognize me anymore, right? Yet, as she brushed past him, a quiet voice cut through the air. Hey! A soft toss. Before she even realized it, his jacket was in her hands. Her fingers curled around the fabric, her heart pounding. Let's talk, he said, stepping forward, his gaze locked onto hers. I'm the owner of this bar. My last name is Sang. Shock flickered across her face. Was he introducing himself? Did he not remember her after all? Is there anything you need? She asked, keeping her voice even. His response was simple, yet unexpected. I want to apologize for the inconvenience. Your bill tonight will be on the house. Her mind drifts to the past as she silently observes him. He's still the same as before, she muses. No, it's fine, she replies. As he turns to go, she suddenly remembers. His coat. Instinctively, she reaches for it, calling out his name. Sang. But she catches herself too late. Panic flashes across her face. How could strangers know each other's names? She scolds herself internally, realizing her slip. Still, gathering her courage, she rushes after him, calling out more formally this time. Star Sang. He stops in his tracks, his eyes narrowing in silent curiosity. Then, amusement flickers in his expression. He hums, turning towards her fully. Their eyes meet, and Wen Yi Fan freezes. Star Sang? He echoes her words, a small smirk playing at his lips. She looks at him thinking, why does she say that? A beat of silence passed before Sang Yan's lips curled into an amused smile. Ah, so that's what it is, he mused, as if slowly piecing something together. Yi Fan blinked in confusion, flustered under his gaze. Then, without missing a beat, he leaned slightly closer, his voice playful yet firm. Sorry, but we're a decent bar. Please mind your actions. His teasing words struck like a playful jab, causing Yi Fan's face to heat up. Forget it. What's done is done. We wouldn't be meeting again anyway, she reassured herself. She mustered a smile, pushing past her growing unease. That's a bit of a pity, she said, feigning indifference. As she handed him his jacket, Star Sang's smirk deepened. Won't you be quite happy, he teased, to borrow my jacket? I am not so sure, but it seems like I am more famous than the bar, so you can keep it as a souvenir, he said with a confident smile. She looked blankly as he left, not knowing how to counter that. Later, as she sat with her friend, the absurdity of the situation finally hit her. Her friend burst into laughter, shaking her head in disbelief. He really said that, what a brat. Why didn't he just let you take it home and frame it up? She sighed, swirling her drink absent-mindedly. That's exactly what he meant, she admitted with a bitter smile. From across the room, Sang-yeon sat at the bar, a blonde woman by his side. Soon, a waiter hesitantly approaches and apologizes for an earlier mishap, and informs them that their order has been compensated by the owner. He hands them a refund, but Yi Fan declines and insists he keep the money. Before he left, one more thing, she says, handing over a coat. I found this near the restroom. It might belong to a customer. He accepts it with a quiet thank you, while her friend, seated across from her, watches with curiosity. Wen Yi Fan, does he really not recognize you? She asks, eyebrows raised. Wen Yi Fan remains silent, her fingers tracing the condensation on her glass. You don't look that different from high school, her friend murmurs. It's only your hair that's a little shorter. Wen Yi Fan's eyes drifted to him, who sat there looking indifferent to anything. Her friend sighs. Fine, I suppose it's possible he doesn't remember you, she concedes. But come on, someone as eligible as Sang-yeon must have had plenty of girls around him before. Her friend stretches, setting her drink down. Let's go. This place is getting boring. Next time, let's hit a club instead. As she rises from her seat, something slips from her wrist, her bracelet. It falls silently to the ground, unnoticed. They walk past the bar, their conversation drifting into the background. Her friend mentions, almost casually, Shang Lang told me he'll be back next month. Wen Yi Fan nods, her mind elsewhere. Meanwhile, at the bar, a woman nudges Sang-yeon playfully. Let's exchange WeChat contacts, she coaxes. With a nonchalant flicker of his dark eyes, he calmly replies, Nah, I don't have a phone, smoothly shutting down any further attempts at small talk. A bartender approaches the bar counter table. Hey, the customers from K11 left a bracelet. Sang-yeon sat there swirling the drink in his glass, revealed that not only was a bracelet left behind, but a jacket too, one that suspiciously resembles that of Brother Yan. Didn't I say that they don't need to pay? Sang-yeon's voice is cool, but there's an unmistakable edge to it. The bartender stammers. I did tell the customers, but, she insisted, this might not be for the D-drinks. The bartender's voice hesitates, unsure of the gravity of the situation. It was quite noisy, so I might have misheard, but the next words settle in like an unexpected punch. The customer's friend asked her if she had come to the bar just to see you, he says, his tone careful. Sang-yeon's heart stills for a fraction of a second before the bartender finishes. She said no, then, SS Shisade it's TTO. The bartender gulps, as if reluctant to continue. Sang-yeon lifts his gaze. Hook up. The bartender fidgets under the weight of the statement, then attempts a weak clarification. So, maybe they gave this for your hookup fee. Next day, as Yi Fan was busy working, her phone buzzed. She opened it and saw a message from her friend telling her to help her to retrieve her bracelet from the bar after work. With a sigh, Yi Fan agreed to it. In the evening, she stepped into the same bar. She walked straight to the counter, her voice soft yet firm. I was here last night with a friend and dropped a bracelet. Did anyone pick it up? One of the bartenders, slightly flustered, exchanged glances with his colleague. Yes, we did. Please wait a moment. A murmur between the bartenders only deepened her curiosity. Usual. Where's the bracelet from last night? Why isn't it here? Did Brother Yan take it? I'm sorry, the owner usually holds lost items, but he is not here. Would you like to leave your number so we can contact you once it's found? The bartender asked. She hesitated before nodding. All right, I'll leave my contact number. She picked up the pen, poised to write. As she was about to give it back, a hand swiftly snatched the notebook away. Her breath hitched as she turned abruptly, her gaze locking onto a familiar face. Sang-yeon. A hint of amusement playing at the corners of his lips. So you're back already? He asked, his tone teasing. A man, dark-clad and exuding an effortless charm, held a small, familiar card between his fingers. He tilted his head slightly, an amused smirk tugging at his lips. You came just to let me have your number? His voice carried a trace of playful arrogance. He casually pulled out a chair, his movements fluid and unhurried. With effortless grace, he poured a drink. Sliding the glass toward her, he leaned in slightly, his gaze sharp yet unreadable. So, he drawled, amusement flickering in his voice. What can I do for you? This guy. Why is he teasing me like I'm trying to hook up with him, she thought. Exasperated yet unable to look away. I'm here for my friend's bracelet, she stated firmly, pushing aside her discomfort. I was told the boss handles lost and found items. He let out a small scoff, swirling his drink lazily. And who told you I had time to deal with misplaced items? Her patience wore thin. I'll leave my number here. Call me when it's found, she said, placing a note on the counter. For the first time, something shifted in his expression. As she turned to leave, a low voice stopped her in her tracks. Wait a minute. She turned, puzzled, watching as he lazily raised his glass. Mingbo, why are you just standing around? A bartender approached. Someone lost something important. Are you not going to look for it? She observed him carefully, an inexplicable feeling settling in her chest. Their first encounter had been frustrating, yet something about him felt oddly familiar. Years ago, at Nanwoo High School, she climbed the steps. Class, she murmured to herself, scanning the hallways nervously. She spotted a tall figure at the water fountain, his back turned toward her. With hesitant steps, she approached, clearing her throat. "Excuse me." The boy didn't turn right away. "Do you know where class 117 is?" she asked hesitantly. He paused for a moment before responding, his voice slow and deliberate. "Go straight. Turn right." "Then?" she asked, blinking in confusion. His gaze flickered with amusement as he finally looked at her properly. "Then?" he repeated, arching a brow. Feeling flustered, she struggled to find words. He sighed, his voice lower this time. "Read the numbers yourself, or do you need this senior to read each one out for you?" Her cheeks burned at his teasing words. She wasn't sure if he was mocking her or just having fun at her expense. Later, the bustling hallways led her to her new classroom, class 1 to 17. She took a deep breath before stepping inside. "Sang-yan?" the teacher called. "Miss, my name is Wen Yi Fan," she corrected politely. The teacher blinked in surprise. "Oh, I assumed you were Sang-yan. The attendance list showed that you and he were the only ones not present, and Sang-yan sounded more feminine." Just then, a familiar voice cut through the moment. "I'm sorry for being late, miss." Wen Yi Fan's eyes widened as she turned. There he was, the boy from before, standing at the doorway. "So you're Sang-yan?" the teacher asked, confirming what Wen Yi Fan had already suspected. "Yes, teacher," he replied nonchalantly. The teacher frowned. "Why were you both late on the first day of school? Did you two come together?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. Sang-yan lazily scratched the back of his head. "No," he said with a casual shrug. "My dad didn't realize I was already in senior high, so he sent me to the junior high campus instead." Silence. Then a collective reaction of disbelief and amusement spread across the classroom. Later, Sang-yan's friend jokingly teases him about his name being girly. With an air of confidence, he jokingly flirts, saying that if Sang-yan were a girl, he would definitely pursue him. In retaliation, Sang-yan crushes Su-hwan's playful arrogance by stating that even if he were a girl, he wouldn't fall for someone like him. He then goes on to explain, with exaggerated dramatics, how his father painstakingly chose his name through days of research and family meetings, ensuring it was the manliest name possible. His prideful declaration, however, is met with skeptical stares from his classmates. The girl beside him covers her mouth, barely containing her laughter. Catching her laughing, they both turned to her. Sang-yan leaned closer. "I haven't had the chance to ask," he began. "New seatmate, what's your name?" The question lingers in the air, almost as if time slows. Back in the present, she still remembers that younger version of him, as the bartender approached found it. "It was under the account book," he announced, holding up a delicate golden bracelet. With a grateful smile, she tucked the bracelet safely into her palm. "Thank you." His sharp gaze followed her as she turned to leave, yet he remained motionless, his fingers tightening around the drink. He glared at the bartender, who chuckled nervously. The bartender giggled, trying to mask his unease. "You got a problem?" the man asked, his expression darkening. Nope. The bartender immediately averted his gaze. Later that night, Yifan informs Xiao that she retrieved her bracelet. Xiao excitedly invites her to a fireworks show. But Yifan declines. She has work to cover the live stream of the fireworks for a TV station at some different location. Just as she was about to unwind, a loud bang shattered the silence. She froze. A drunken voice slurred from outside. "Hey, pretty lady, do me a favor, my bathroom is broken, so let me take a shower at your place." Her breath hitched. "This guy again?" "I know you're in there." The pounding grew violent. Heart racing, she grabbed her phone. "Hello? 110? I need to report." The next morning, she arrives at Manhwa TV station, visibly exhausted. Her coworker notices her exhaustion. With no choice but to find a new home, she explained about her situation. Another colleague presents an unexpected lifeline. "Looking for a place? My roommate just moved out." It seems fate is giving her an option. That evening, Dongju Square is alight with festive cheer. Yifan, now in work mode, hands her radio to Fu Zhuang before heading to the restroom. "Hold on to this for me." On her way, she received a message from a friend. Opening it, she found a screenshot. Sang-yan had sent a broadcast wishing everyone a Happy New Year. But she hadn't received it. His number was still in her contacts. Had he deleted hers? That had to be the reason. Shrugging off the thought, she decided to send her own broadcast message. Just as she hit send, a voice nearby caught her attention. "She is in high school now. Does she still need someone to wait for her outside the bathroom?" The voice was familiar. She turned instinctively, her eyes landing on him. Sang-yan, his face illuminated by the glow of his phone, arguing with a woman. Why is he here? She wondered. His mother's voice echoed, explaining that she was out on a date with his father and that he should just wait for his sister. "So, why did you ask me to come?" "To babysit?" he spoke, his deep voice tinged with mild annoyance. As they were arguing, his phone buzzed, and he stared at his phone screen where unread messages blinked at him. Among them was a simple Happy New Year from Yifan. His fingers hesitated over the keyboard, but after some time staring at it blankly, he pressed send, with a short reply. She soon noticed as her phone vibrated. A simple response, ? From Sang-yan, made her confused. "Why did he send a question mark?" she mumbled to herself, staring at her screen. Had she said something strange? No, it was just a Happy New Year. Her fingers hovered over the screen as she began typing, deleting, retyping. You know who I... Delete. You know, delete. The words refused to come out right. She inhaled deeply, deciding that maybe it didn't need to be perfect. If it's not happy, that's fine too. She sent it before she could overthink. As he glanced up, a small, almost imperceptible smile tugged at his lips. Perhaps, the years of unspoken words, something still remained. Nearby, a young woman, dressed in a white hoodie and a soft yellow scarf, finds herself at a restroom sink, dismayed to find no paper towels. Yi Fan, with a mask, standing nearby, offers her a small pink packet, perhaps tissues. Their eyes meet briefly as the girl accepts the kindness. Outside, the girl finds her brother in the bustling crowd. He notices her distracted expression as she murmurs, "I think I saw someone familiar." His sharp gaze follows her movements, but she was already gone. Meanwhile, Yi Fan returned and is busy with event preparations. As she stands there with her colleague, reviewing documents for an upcoming event, he turns to her with a wistful look. "Yi Fan, do you think wishes made on fireworks will come true?" Without missing a beat, she replies, "Nope." He pouts, his expression falling. "I just wanted to wish for a girlfriend next year." She raises an eyebrow, unimpressed. "That'll definitely be even more useless," she mutters. Soon his eyes brighten, thinking of another wish. "But it'll work if I make a small wish to be a little taller, right? Just as tall as that guy over there would be good enough." She follows his gaze, and among the sea of people, standing effortlessly tall with his usual composed expression, is Sang-yeon. "He's got my ideal body type," her colleague blurted, his words laced with admiration. "Why don't you steal his face as well?" Yi Fan teased him. "You're right, but isn't it too much if I take two things away?" He answered seriously to her surprise. Soon the lights from a towering skyscraper flickered as the numbers began to change. The cheers of countdown rang through the streets, anticipation building. Among the sea of people, Yi Fan and his friend maneuvered carefully, but the thick crowd made movement difficult. The surge of bodies was overwhelming. Yi Fan, momentarily distracted, lost her balance as the force of the crowd pressed against her. Her breath hitched, she was falling. But instead of hitting the ground, a firm grip caught her. Warmth enveloped her as a strong hand steadied her, pulling her into a secure embrace. She looked up, wanting to apologize, but her eyes widened in surprise as recognition struck her like a bolt of lightning. It was him, again. The first firework exploded into the sky, golden light illuminating their faces as they stood frozen in the moment. She quickly pulled away, flustered. I'm sorry," she stammered. He let go. "It's all right," he said, barely audible over the cheers around them. As she turned to leave, she convinced herself that he wouldn't recognize her, not with the mask on. "Happy New Year," he said, while continuing his phone call. His words felt oddly directed at her. She turned and stood frozen, watching him from a distance. Maybe I was overthinking what she thought, continuing on her way. As she left, Sang-yeon stopped in his tracks. "You're acting weird today. Still, thank you and Happy New Year," the person on the call said. Sang-yeon turned toward Yi Fan, a puzzled expression crossing his face. "What are you thanking me for?" he asked. "Didn't you just wish me?" The voice on the other end questioned in confusion. With a scoff, Sang-yeon replied coolly, "Don't flatter yourself." Without another word, he ended the call. A faint smile tugged at his lips. Only he knew who his New Year's wish was truly meant for. Next day, her colleague who suggested a renting place brought her to her apartment. "This is a 3-room apartment," she explained, "but only 2 are available for rent. There's a locked utility room." She nodded as she stepped inside. "What do you think?" her potential roommate Xiao Fan asked with a smile. "It's a little expensive," she admitted. "But it's good." Xiao Fan chuckled. "Take your time. Moving is a big deal. Let's eat first," Yao Fan suggested with a grin. "I'm starving." They walked down the illuminated streets. They chatted a bit. Before the conversation could continue, Xiao Fan's phone rang. A sweet, affectionate voice replaced her usual teasing tone. "Darling, what's up?" she cooed, a dreamy look in her eyes. Her smile turned coy. "Really? You're nearby? Why don't you swing by and pick me up?" Yi Fan prepared to leave. "Then I'll get going." "But we were supposed to eat together," Xiao Fan pouted. "My boyfriend's bringing some friends. You won't feel like a third wheel," she reassured. Soon, a sleek black vehicle rolled to a stop beside them. The young man in the driver's seat looked up. "Wen Yi Fan?" "Huh?" she murmured, equally startled. "Su Howan?" Then a frustrated voice of his broke the moment. I can't park here. Just get in already, both of you." As Yi Fan hesitantly turned to the car, her hands tighten on the door handle. Her gaze slowly drifts to the passenger seat, where a man dressed in black, his hair slightly tousled, sits quietly, his head tilted downward, as if asleep. Yi Fan gets into the car, slightly awkward about her position. A teasing voice from the front seat snaps the moment. "Sang-yeon, wake up! Your first love is sitting right next to you." Sang-yeon opens his eyes and shifts. His eyes flicker toward Yi Fan, who still sits there awkwardly as if she hasn't heard anything. Do you guys know each other? Xiao Fan inquired. Yes, we were all classmates. Yi Fan transferred during the second year, Su Haoan explained. And what do you mean by first love? She asked, her curiosity piqued. Oh, did your friend chase after Yi Fan but it didn't work out? She added, pressing further. Yi Fan clenched her fingers slightly, stealing a glance at Sang Yan, but he remained silent. Su Haoan, it's not like that. Yi Fan tried to brush it off. But Su Haoan wasn't one to let go so easily. No, I'm right. Why aren't you saying anything? He challenged Sang Yan, who sat there, still quiet. Seeing neither of them willing to speak on the matter, Su Haoan finally broke the silence. It's already been 7 or 8 years. I only brought it up to break the ice. Sang Yan, there's no way you're still hung up on it, are you? He asked, curiosity evident in his tone. Everyone's eyes shifted to Sang Yan, but he didn't utter a single word. Just ignore him, Yi Fan, Su Haoan said with a sigh. He's always like this. Thinks he's above everyone. He probably thinks you were dumb for not falling for him, he added with a small laugh, attempting to lighten the tension in the air. As they arrived, Yi Fan took an empty seat beside Sang Yan. Feeling a little excluded, she excused herself to the restroom. Inside, Xiao Fan followed and casually asked, Why did you reject Sang Yan? Aren't your standards too high? She joked. But after a moment, she concluded, Well, judging by how indifferent he acted in the car, it doesn't seem like he still feels that way. Not wanting to dwell on the topic, Yi Fan quickly made an excuse about work to leave as soon as possible. Stay a little longer, Xiao Fan urged, but Yi Fan declined, insisting she had work. As she stepped outside, she found Sang Yan standing there. Gathering her courage, she attempted to initiate a light conversation. Long time no see, she said, but he leaned in slightly, a smirk playing on his lips. It's only been a few days since New Year's Eve. Does a day feel like a year to you when you don't see me? He teased. Yi Fan stared at him. There were 2 things she was certain of: she never knew how to deal with him. And he had definitely recognized her that night but pretended otherwise. Now the look on his face told her she couldn't ignore it either. I thought you didn't recognize me because I was wearing a mask, she said, hoping to brush past the subject. No, I didn't, he admitted. My sister did. He paused before adding, She said you wouldn't stop staring at me. His voice carried a quiet confidence. She looked at him again. He was always like this. That's true, she said with a small smile. Because everyone around you was talking about how your pants were unzipped. His smirk faded as silence fell between them. Anyway, I have some work. Let's catch up another time, she said, turning to leave. Before she could walk away, he called out to her. Do you remember where Su Haoan's car is parked? She nodded. Lead the way, he said. As they reached the parking lot, Sang Yan wished her goodbye and walked toward his car. Meanwhile, Yi Fan checked the app, only to find that no cars were available. With no other option, she turned to him. This place seems a bit remote. Can you give me a ride? She asked. Where do you live? He inquired. After she described her address, he responded casually, Oh, that's not on my way. I'm not asking you to drop me home just near the subway, she said with a hopeful smile. He stared at her for a moment before sliding into his car. Get in, he said. As they sat in the car, silence filled the space. Neither spoke, making the atmosphere heavy. Yi Fan glanced around before stealing a look at him. His face still brought her back to the past. She remembered them sitting in class, their exam results in hand. Su Haoan had teased them about ranking last, just as they had arrived late on their first day of school. Sang Yan, full of confidence, claimed he had a perfect score in math and science. He leaned toward Yi Fan to see her score, but she quickly scolded him, refusing to show her report. Focus on your own mistakes and learn from them, she had told him. But he smirked. At least I don't have that many red crosses on my paper, he teased. Then he looked down at his results and after a moment turned to her. Why don't we apply to the same university? He asked seriously. What do you think? She had stared at him then, just as she was now. Hey, you can drop me here, she suddenly said, realizing they had just passed a subway station. Do I look like your chauffeur? He replied coldly. Then where are we going? She asked, puzzled. To your house, he answered flatly. They soon arrived at her place. As she got out of the car, she turned to him. Thank you. I'll treat you to a meal whenever you're free. Oh? You're already planning the next time you'll see me? He said playfully. She froze. Had he really gotten so popular that he thought that way about everything? Or was he misunderstanding her because of what she had said at the bar that day? Feeling the need to clarify, she quickly said, I didn't mean what I said at the bar. Which part? He asked, a sly smile playing on his lips. The part where you said it's a pity. Realizing it was pointless to argue with him, she turned away. Okay, bye now, she said, walking off. He watched her retreating figure, something unreadable flashing in his eyes. As Yi Fan climbed the steps toward her house, she noticed a group of men standing there, seemingly waiting for her. One of them stepped forward. Let's see if you still have that attitude after we show you what real harassment is like, he sneered. Realizing their intent, fear gripped her. Without hesitation, she turned and ran back down the steps. Her heart pounded as their voices echoed behind her. As she stepped outside the building, her eyes darted toward the black car still parked nearby. Sang Yan was standing beside it, talking on the phone. He noticed her immediately, his gaze shifting toward her, but she quickly looked away, pretending not to see him. "Yi Fan?" He called out, sensing something was wrong. She didn't respond and walked past him as if she didn't know him. But before she could get any further, he swiftly made his way toward her, grabbed her arm, pulled open the car door, and pushed her inside. "Stay inside. Don't come out," he ordered, slamming the door shut and locking it. The group of men approached. "Young man, is that your girlfriend?" one of them asked. "Mind your own business," Sang Yan replied, irritation flickering across his face. "We're not here to cause trouble," the man said, puffing on his cigarette. "But your little girlfriend needs to come out and apologize." He sneered as he continued rambling about her looks. But before he could say another word, Sang Yan's foot connected with his stomach, sending him staggering backward. His friends rushed forward in concern. Sang Yan stood his ground. "Are you going to leave or not?" he asked, making it clear that he wouldn't accept no for an answer. The men, however, weren't planning to back down. Together, they lunged at him, but he fought them off single-handedly. Inside the car, Yi Fan quickly dialed the police. As the fight continued, sirens blared in the distance. The police had arrived. Seeing them, Yi Fan immediately stepped out of the car. Without thinking, she moved to stand in front of Sang Yan, shielding him. "I was the one who called," she told the officers. "This is my friend, and these men attacked us." Sang Yan looked down at her, surprised. In that moment, as she stood protectively in front of him, later they sat in a nearby park. Yi Fan handed him a bag of medicine. "Put some medicine on first. Are you hurt anywhere else?" she asked worriedly as she sat beside him. Sang Yan remained silent, not uttering a word. "Should we go to the hospital? It won't take long," she asked again, concern evident in her voice. "Yi Fan," he called out suddenly, his voice steady. "Didn't you see me earlier? I called out to you. Didn't you hear me? Why did you run instead of asking me for help?" His eyes locked onto hers. She looked away. I didn't want to drag you into it. There were 3 of them. "I thought it would be too much for you to handle alone," she explained. He sighed, watching her carefully. So that was her reason for running away. Tearing open the packet of medicine, he began applying it to his face. "Let me help you," Yi Fan offered, startling him. She took the medicine from his hand and gently dabbed it onto his wounds. "Don't use this as an opportunity to take advantage of me now," he teased, his tone light but his gaze unwavering. "Yeah, sure, I'll watch myself," she replied, playing along, knowing it was impossible to stop him from teasing her. He fell silent. She was refusing to give him another chance to poke fun at her. But as he watched her, his heart pounded louder and louder. Yi Fan, sensing his gaze, glanced up, and in that moment, both their hearts raced in sync, a mix of nervousness and excitement filling the air. Lost in the moment, she accidentally pressed a little too hard on his chin, making him wince. "Can't you be more gentle?" he complained, pouting. "My bad, sorry." "I'll be more careful," she said quickly, now more focused, not wanting to hurt him further. He looked down, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You're just applying medicine. Do you really need to get this close?" he asked, his tone serious, catching her off guard. She immediately pulled away. "Sorry, it's just a little dark," she excused herself, hurriedly putting the medicine back into the bag. Afterward, he asked for details about the incident, and she explained everything that led up to it. "So why are you still living there?" he asked, puzzled. She informed him that she had already found a new place, but hadn't had time to move out yet. He stood up. "Let's go. Pack your stuff. Or are you planning to spend another night in that horrible place?" His voice was cold, leaving no room for argument. Gratitude filled her at the thought that he was staying with her while she packed. "Thank you," she murmured sincerely. They soon arrived at her new place, bringing some of her belongings. "I'm sorry for the inconvenience earlier," she apologized. "I promise I'll treat you to a meal." "Forget it," he replied indifferently. "Even if it was someone else, I would have done the same. Still, you fought for me and even got a scar on your beautiful face. I owe you. So please, let me know if you ever need help in the future," she said, her sincerity clear. "Okay, sure. Bye now," he said, turning to leave. As he sat in his car, his phone rang. "Where's the car?" Su Haoen's voice came through. "Did you just realize that?" Sang Yan sighed. Su Haoen rambled on about being stuck with his girlfriend. "If you're done, I'm hanging up now," Sang Yan said, reaching for a cigarette. "Why are you so heartless? Aren't you going to comfort me?" Su Haoen complained. Sang Yan searched for his lighter when his gaze landed on something. He picked it up. It was Yi Fan's keys. "Then, don't get into a relationship," Sang Yan replied absent-mindedly, staring at the keys. "No, I still like the feeling of being with someone," Su Haoen countered. "Then you're just asking for trouble," Sang Yan muttered, his eyes drifting toward the direction Yi Fan had gone. "You'll understand once you get into one yourself," Su Haoen added, oblivious to the fact that Sang Yan was already feeling it, even without being in a relationship. A few days later, as Xiao Fan greeted Yi Fan in the morning, she asked if Yi Fan had been awake in the middle of the night. Yi Fan shook her head, denying it, but Xiao Fan wondered aloud if she had just been dreaming. She was sure she had heard some noise during the night. Yi Fan paused, a thought creeping into her mind. Could it be that I was sleepwalking again? It hadn't happened in a while, but it was possible. Later, Xiao Fan informed her that she had been offered a new job in a far-off location and would be moving out soon. However, she reassured Yi Fan that she would find a new roommate before leaving. With no other choice, Yi Fan agreed to her suggestion. As Yi Fan busied herself in the kitchen, her phone vibrated. She picked it up and saw a message from Sang Yan. Attached was a picture of her old house key with a message that read, "Don't use the same trick twice." She sighed, recognizing his confident attitude even through text. She quickly replied, "Sorry for causing trouble again. Let me know when it's convenient for you, and I'll come to get it." Sang Yan read her message and smirked before sending a voice message. How about tonight? She had no issue with that, so she asked where she should meet him, his bar or his house. Reading her response, his smirk deepened. All he focused on was the phrase "at his house." "Did you just say my house?" he asked in a teasing voice message. Yi Fan frowned at his tone. Why does he sound like I have some ulterior motive? Before she could dwell on it, a second voice message arrived. "Come to the bar at 8 sharp." She agreed, and Sang Yan looked at the keys in his hand with a faint smile. As Yi Fan was replying, Xiao Fan approached her. "Are you talking to Sang Yan? And you also left with him last time. Are you trying to get close to him after rejecting him?" she asked bluntly. Seeing Yi Fan's hesitation, she added, "You should be careful. He might be making fun of you behind your back with his friends. After all, he's a playboy." Yi Fan stood there silent. "I'm not trying to get close to him, and he's not that kind of jiggy, right?" Later that evening, she arrived at the bar. He stood there, hands in his pockets, waiting for her and complaining about how late she was. Without another word, he tossed the keys to her. "Thanks," she said, before offering again to treat him to a meal since she had caused him trouble multiple times recently. To her surprise, this time he agreed. "You keep bringing it up. You won't stop until I say yes, right?" he said with a smirk. She asked what he liked to eat, to which he casually replied, "Anything." But when she suggested different options, he rejected all of them. Sometimes due to the smell, sometimes because it was too spicy, and other times simply because he didn't like it. Irritation filled Yi Fan. Is this man even planning to eat? He said anything was fine, yet he's so picky. Then, why don't you suggest something? She asked, exasperated. Before he could reply, his phone rang. "Sang Yan, your house just exploded." Su Haoen's panicked voice came through the line. Sang Yan remained composed, his tone unchanged. "Speak in a language I can understand." Su Haoen quickly explained that a fire had broken out in the apartment below his, spreading to his unit. Still indifferent, Sang Yan responded, "Call the fire department," before turning to walk ahead. "Let's go," he ordered. Seeing his unbothered expression, she called after him. "Shouldn't we go to your house first?" Maintaining his indifferent demeanor, he shot back. "Do I look like a firefighter to you?" She was speechless. She had never seen someone this calm. "One more question," she added, startling him. "Could you tell me where your house is so I can inform the station and have them rush to cover it?" Her professionalism left him momentarily, speechless. They soon arrived at the scene, where everything was in chaos. Yi Fan's colleagues noticed the man beside her and inquired about him. Upon learning that he was a victim of the fire, they turned to interview him. Sang Yan stood there, looking up at his burning apartment. His face was unreadable, a blank page. Yi Fan noticed the shift in his expression, but before she could say anything, a reporter approached him. "Pardon, but how are you feeling at this moment?" Sang Yan turned to the reporter and with a deadpan expression responded, "Oh, I'm feeling very happy. I hope you'll be just as happy as I am." It was impossible to tell whether he was being sarcastic or serious. The reporter continued, "Did you suffer any losses?" "I don't have anything that valuable," he replied indifferently. With that, the reporter wrapped up the interview and thanked him. Before leaving, he turned to Yi Fan and whispered, "Please support him. He seems oddly indifferent about everything, and since you're his classmate, maybe you understand him better." She glanced at Sang Yan, feeling a hint of sympathy. Meanwhile, Sang Yan called Su Haoen. "Find me a temporary place until the renovations are done." Su Haoen sighed and suggested, "Why don't you just go back home?" Sang Yan didn't respond to that. Instead, he replied flatly, "If you're not going to help, I'll just crash at your place." Having no other choice, Su Haoen asked, "All right, which area do you prefer?" Sang Yan's eyes drifted to Yi Fan, who was busy talking to someone nearby. "Find me a place in the Shangduhua area." Apparently, it was the same area as Yi Fan. On the other side of the call, Su Haoen let out a long sigh. He happened to be sitting with Xiao Fan, who had also asked him earlier to find a replacement roommate. Now, one person needed a place to stay, and another needed a new roommate. "Didn't I just get the perfect solution handed to me?" he thought with a smirk. The next day, after work, Yi Fan chatted with a colleague on her way home. As she entered her house, she immediately noticed someone was already inside. Both spoke at the same time, startled. "What are you doing here?" It was Sang Yan. Yi Fan's confusion deepened. "I live here." "But how did you get in?" she asked. Sang Yan raised his hand, effortlessly twirling a keyring around his finger. "I just moved in." His tone remained as arrogant and self-assured as ever. Without hesitation, Yi Fan pulled out her phone and called Xiao Fan. "Did you give your keys to someone?" she demanded, irritation laced in her voice. Xiao Fan, completely unaware, admitted that she had given them to her boyfriend to find a replacement but didn't know who had moved in. "It's Sang Yan." Yi Fan exhaled, still trying to process the situation. To her dismay, Xiao Fan seemed rather pleased. "Oh, that's actually a great idea. Sang Yan is rich, handsome. Maybe it's fate?" she teased. Yi Fan groaned. "How is this supposed to be good?" "Oh? Are you afraid he still has feelings for you?" Xiao Fan teased again, but before Yi Fan could respond, she rambled on. "Actually, Su Haoan once told me that throughout his 4 years of college, Sang Yan acted like a playboy but never actually had a girlfriend. Never even got involved with anyone. So, maybe he's gay? But then, that's even better, right? There's no issue living with a gay guy." Yi Fan stood in silence, letting her friend's nonsense wash over her. Meanwhile, out on the balcony, Sang Yan was locked in his own argument with Su Haoan. "Are you out of your mind? I'm coming to your place right now." His voice was laced with irritation. But Su Haoan was quick to shut him down. "Not happening. I'm busy, and my place isn't available. Besides, wasn't it your long-time wish to live with Yi Fan?" Sang Yan scoffed. "But don't you think it's inappropriate for us to live together?" Su Haoan's tone turned smug. "Didn't you specifically ask me to find a place in that area? Don't think I don't know what you meant by that area." Sang Yan fell silent. "Just thank me, dude. You're literally living with your first love. Who knows, maybe one day she'll go crazy and fall for you." Sang Yan immediately hung up. Back inside, Yi Fan called out to him, ready to discuss their living situation. "Look, I can book you a hotel room for tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure out a better place for you." "And what makes you think I need another place?" he asked, smirking. "Well, you've always lived alone. I doubt you'd be comfortable sharing a space." His smirk deepened. "And what makes you think that?" "I mean, you can afford to live alone, so it's obvious. Did you forget? My house caught fire. All my money is going into renovations." "But you own a bar," she pointed out. "But I don't earn that much from it." He folded his arms. She tried again. "I work odd hours. I might disturb you. Then just don't make noise when you come home late." He dismissed her reasoning with ease. Yi Fan sighed, realizing she was running out of solid arguments. He noticed her discomfort and let out a breath. "Look, it's not permanent. The reconstruction will take 3 months. I'll move out then. And besides, I've already moved in. Leaving now would just be extra effort." She glanced at his single suitcase. "But all you have is this suitcase." Sang Yan ignored her skepticism. "Sang Yan, we're a man and a woman living under the same roof. Don't you think that's going to be awkward?" Leaning against the sofa, he propped his chin on his hand and smirked. "Yi Fan, are you worried I still have feelings for you? Afraid I'll start pursuing you again, like I did back then?" Caught off guard, she hesitated. "No, that's not what I meant." His smirk grew even more teasing. "Or is it the other way around? Are you the one who can't forget me?" The air between them grew still, but Yi Fan quickly composed herself. "No, don't worry, I won't take advantage of you." She smiled, brushing off the tension. "Since we're not resolving this tonight, let's calm down and figure it out tomorrow after work. You can stay here for now." She stood up, signaling the end of the conversation. Sang Yan leaned back slightly. "What time will you be free?" "Not sure, but I'll be back by 8. He gave a brief nod, avoiding eye contact as she closed her bedroom door. Alone in the living room, he stared at the floor, lost in thought. The next morning, Yi Fan's phone rang. Half asleep, she picked up. Seeing her mother's name on the screen, she instantly became fully awake. Her father's last words echoed in her mind. "Take care of your mother." Her mother's voice came through, asking if she'd be coming home for New Year's. Yi Fan hesitated before asking, "Did you talk to Kelsey? Will she be okay with it?" Before her mother could answer, her stepsister's voice interrupted in the background, complaining about being held up while shopping. The call ended abruptly. Yi Fan sat there in silence for a while, then set her phone down in silence. Still, distracted, she walked out of her room and noticed Sang Yan's bag was still there, but his shoes were missing. A sudden unease crept in. She quickly made her way to his room, knocking before entering. But as she pushed open the door, it was empty. Meanwhile, inside a hotel room, Sang Yan was still fast asleep when his phone vibrated. Blinking at the screen, he saw a series of messages from Yi Fan. "Where were you last night? Where should we meet for our talk?" He smirked at the persistence. That night, when Yi Fan returned home, the apartment was still empty. He had told her he'd be back by 8, yet there was no sign of him. Her eyes landed on his keys, still in the same spot he had left them the night before. Did he do this to reassure her? She wondered. Maybe she had been too harsh yesterday. Living with him for 3 months wasn't that bad, was it? He could be annoying and arrogant, but she had known him for a long time. Deep down, she knew he was a good person. Was I too hard on him? The thought filled her with guilt. As she pondered, the doorbell rang. Opening the door, she found him standing there. "Come in. Want some coffee?" she offered, stepping aside. He walked in, his usual relaxed demeanor intact. "Where did you go last night?" she asked as she prepared the coffee. "A hotel." His answer was simple. Sitting across from him, she decided to get to the point. "So, let's talk. Have you thought about what I said yesterday?" Instead of answering, he turned the question back on her. "Have you?" She met his gaze and nodded. "Yes. I don't mind having a roommate as long as they're respectful and mind their own business. So, I'm fine with it." He raised a brow. "You trust me that much?" "There's nothing to worry about." His eyes sharpened slightly. "But you're the one I'm worried about." She studied him for a moment, her expression saying only one thing. "Then don't stay here." But she continued. "I barely even talk to my roommates. And if privacy is a concern, you can always lock your door." She then shifted the conversation to practical matters: rent, deposits, and utility bills. He listened with minimal interest, finally cutting in. "Just tell me the total amount." Ignoring his impatience, she moved on to house rules. "No noise at night while sleeping." "Done," he agreed effortlessly. "No revealing clothes in shared spaces." His lips curved into a smirk. "Revealing? You wish?" She pressed on. "And we need to notify each other before bringing guests over, regardless of gender. If you have a girlfriend, she should know this in advance." He remained unfazed. "Don't worry about that." Something about his confidence made her glance up. "I don't have a girlfriend." His tone was casual, but his gaze was steady. She looked away. "Oh, that's fine then." Sensing her discomfort, he added with a teasing smile, "But don't get too excited, okay? I'm just not interested in dating right now." Her expression clearly asked, "Why are you telling me this?" With a small smile, she concluded, "All right. We'll revisit this rule if either of us starts dating. And I'll let you know if I get a boyfriend." And with that, they became temporary roommates. Sang-yan inspected his room before abruptly deciding he wanted Yi Fan's instead. His reasoning? He simply liked it better. Yi Fan, confused, questioned why he would prefer a smaller space over the spacious master bedroom, especially since she couldn't even afford the rent for it. But, as stubborn as ever, Sang-yan dismissed her concerns, stating that he would be covering the rent and, since he was paying more, he had the right to choose whichever room he liked. Without waiting for further argument, he turned away, ending the discussion. Still baffled, Yi Fan pressed him for a reason, only for him to nonchalantly reply that the room smelled. The absurdity of his reasoning made her frown, but there was no point in arguing with someone as unreasonable as him. After reluctantly moving all her belongings, she settled into her new room. Lying down, she wondered if there truly was any odor in this room. But questioning the demands of a confident and entitled prince like Sang-yan was pointless. He had always been like this, even in high school. Her thoughts drifted back to the past. She recalled the day they had arrived late for class, and rumors about them had already begun spreading. Soo Haeun had been the one to bring it up, recounting the various versions of their supposed relationship. Sang-yan, indifferent as ever, had barely reacted. But Soo Haeun had pressed further, insisting that it was impossible for Sang-yan to have no feelings for a girl as pretty as Yi Fan. His words had been met with nothing but silence, until Sang-yan turned, catching sight of Yi Fan standing nearby. With his usual smirk, he casually remarked that everyone was talking about them dating. Yi Fan had been startled by his sudden words, but as always, he had stood there with unwavering confidence, just like he did today. Later that night, as she stepped out for water, she unexpectedly found Sang-yan standing in front of her. Fresh out of the shower, water dripped from his damp hair down to his neck. Her gaze involuntarily followed the movement, lips pressing together as she quickly averted her eyes. Without a word, she turned and hurried back to her room, leaving him behind. Sharing a living space with him was still an adjustment. The next morning, as Yi Fan prepared breakfast, her phone buzzed with an incoming video call from Jong Si-kiao. The moment she answered, Jong Si-kiao excitedly announced that she had found a new roommate for her. At the mention of a replacement, Sang-yan, who had been casually listening in the background, suddenly turned his attention toward the conversation. The screen displayed the face of Xiang Lang, a familiar friend from high school, now back in the country. Yi Fan greeted him warmly, exchanging pleasantries. However, as soon as his name was mentioned, Sang-yan seemed visibly unsettled. Jong Si-kiao enthusiastically suggested that Xiang Lang could move in as her new roommate. Yi Fan glanced at Sang-yan, then responded that she had already found someone. A small, almost imperceptible smile appeared on Sang-yan's face. After the call ended, Sang-yan casually inquired about her plans for Wednesday. When she mentioned she was going out and meeting Xiang Lang, she expected him to acknowledge their shared history. But instead, he feigned ignorance, claiming not to remember who Xiang Lang was. Yi Fan found that hard to believe. Her mind drifted back to the past again. She had walked into class one day to find every head turning toward her, whispers of rumors filling the air. Ignoring them, she took her seat. But moments later, Sang-yan entered, dragging a student behind him and shoving him forward in front of her. The boy, looking utterly terrified, was forced to apologize. Shocked, Yi Fan instinctively apologized as well, despite not understanding what was happening. The classroom fell into stunned silence. Sang Yan, unimpressed by the boy's weak attempt, barked at him to speak properly. The boy immediately confessed that he had spread the rumor. He had seen Yi Fan with Shang Lang and assumed she had dumped Sang Yan for him. Sang Yan, ever indifferent but known for holding grudges, made it clear that anyone who spread rumors again would face consequences. Then, with an air of arrogance, he turned to the boy, demanding an apology for himself as well. The rumor had not only painted Yi Fan in a bad light, but it had also made it seem as though Sang Yan had been heartbroken after being left for Shang Lang. And that, he declared, was ridiculous. Anyone he pursued would only have eyes for him and no one else. Now, years later, that same arrogant boy was asking for Yi Fan's help in business. As his supposed roommate, he wanted her to hold a reunion at his bar, even offering her a discount. Surprised, Yi Fan questioned if his bar was struggling. Then, without thinking, she offhandedly remarked that perhaps it was because it looked like a barber shop. Sang Yan smirked at the remark and asked if it was really that bad. Then why had she gone there in the first place? Realizing she couldn't reveal their actual reason for visiting that night, Yi Fan fell silent. Later, Yi Fan met a man for an interview as part of her work as a journalist. As she was leaving, she unexpectedly ran into her stepsister, Jeng Kejia. Growing up, Kejia had always had an issue with Yi Fan staying at their house. Without hesitation, Yi Fan made it clear that even though she was back in the city, she had no intention of staying with them, so Kejia didn't need to worry. Kejia then asked if Yi Fan would be coming home for the traditional New Year. Yi Fan firmly declined, stating that she had no issues with them but simply wanted to live her own life. Her mind drifted back to the past. After her father passed away, her mother had moved in with her new husband, leaving Yi Fan in the care of her grandmother. Soon after, her grandmother had sent her to live with her uncle and aunt. She had been passed from one household to another, never having a place to truly call home. She remembered a particular day when she had sat at a bus stop, clutching her knees. She had lost the $20 her aunt had given her, and was too afraid to return home, fearing she would be abandoned once again. A voice had called out to her. Sang Yan. His smile had been as bright as the sun as he crouched in front of her, asking why she looked so down. Hesitantly, she had asked if he had $20. Sang Yan had just come from playing basketball and didn't have any money on him. But instead of leaving, he had stood up, telling her to wait for 5 minutes. He had placed his ball in her lap before running off. Yi Fan had wrapped her arms around the ball, waiting. Soon his voice had called out again, breathless as he ran back toward her. As he reached her, he was panting, trying to catch his breath before handing her the money he had gone to get. Yi Fan had struggled to hold back her tears as she took it, whispering her thanks. With a reassuring smile, Sang Yan had asked why she still looked down, and had promised her that if she ever needed anything, she could come to him. He would always help her. Now, standing at that same bus stop, lost in the memory, Yi Fan's phone rang. It was her mother. Her voice was strained, almost hesitant, as she asked why Yi Fan hadn't told her she was back in the city. Kejia had already informed her. Yi Fan, not wanting to circle around the topic, asked directly what she wanted. On the other end, she could hear her mother's quiet sobs. Between them, she apologized, saying she knew she hadn't been a good mother these past few years. Yi Fan assured her that she was indeed a good mother, not just to her, but those last words remained unspoken. Later that night, when Yi Fan reached home, she saw that Sang Yan was still awake. Noticing her, he casually mentioned that he was very conscious about his safety and couldn't sleep unless he was sure the door was locked. His tone carried its usual teasing lilt, but there was a flicker of sincerity beneath it. Yi Fan sighed, offering a quick reassurance that she would always lock the door properly, but Sang Yan wasn't convinced. With the same casual arrogance, he added that from now on, if she planned to stay out past 10, she should inform him in advance, so he wouldn't have to stay up all night waiting. Faced with no other choice, Yi Fan begrudgingly agreed. On Wednesday evening, as Yi Fan prepared to leave, she noticed Sang Yan also heading out. Their timing, as always, seemed unintentionally aligned. Stepping outside, she spotted Su Haoan waiting nearby, seemingly for Sang Yan. Realizing that almost everyone present, and they all had attended the same high school, she casually mentioned that Sang Yan was now her roommate. For a moment, there was a collective silence, their expressions shifting between disbelief, amusement, and curiosity. Yet, Sang Yan remained as nonchalant as ever, casually remarking that she didn't need to brag about him. The reaction left everyone baffled. Su Haoan, never one to let things slide, immediately teased him for being shameless, earning himself a glare from Sang Yan. His amusement was short-lived. Originally, Su Haoan had planned to meet Sang Yan alone, but seeing that everyone was already gathered, he suggested they all go out together. No one objected, and soon, they found themselves seated around a dinner table. The dinner began with Siqiao and Shang Lang reminiscing about their childhood memories with Yi Fan. As the conversation flowed, Shang Lang brought up Yi Fan's clumsy habits from their childhood. Through it all, Sang Yan remained quiet, sipping his drink, his expression unreadable. Unlike the others, he did not laugh or reminisce. His focus shifted, and Su Haoan, unfortunately, bore the brunt of his irritation. From time to time, Yi Fan glanced at Sang Yan. At some point, their eyes met. It lasted only a moment, but the intensity behind his gaze caught her off guard. Quickly, she averted her gaze, bringing her drink to her lips. After dinner, they moved to Sang Yan's bar. Despite the change of location, Sang-yan made no effort to leave Yifan's side. He sat beside her, his presence unwavering. Siqiao, always perceptive, leaned in closer to Yifan, whispering her thoughts. She remarked that living with Sang-yan must be exhausting, given how he hadn't smiled once the entire evening. His expression made it seem like someone owed him $1 million. Yifan said nothing, merely giving a small, knowing smile. The night progressed with games, and Su Hawan, full of energy, suggested playing liar's dice. Before they started, he issued a warning to Yifan. She needed to be careful. Sang-yan was particularly skilled at this game, and unfortunately he was seated right next to her. As the rounds began, Su Hawan's luck was abysmal. Round after round he lost, forced to drink each time, while Sang-yan, completely unfazed, remained undefeated. Finally, after losing several rounds in a row, Su Hawan threw up his hands in frustration, begging Sang-yan for mercy. To everyone's surprise, Sang-yan agreed. It was now Yifan's turn to lose a round. Instead of drinking, she opted to draw a penalty card. Her task? She had to state one good quality about each person of the opposite gender. She started with Xiang Lang, noting his attentiveness to details. Then, Su Hawan, his passion and enthusiasm were undeniable. Finally, her gaze landed on Sang-yan. For a moment, she hesitated. He watched her, waiting. His usual confidence remained, but beneath it, there was something else, a quiet curiosity. After a brief pause, she spoke. One word. Rich. The answer was unexpected, yet undeniably true. As the game continued, it was Xiang Lang's turn to lose. He chose to draw a penalty card, and upon reading it, the card prompted him to reveal something he regretted. Without hesitation, he admitted that his biggest regret was not being able to attend college with Yifan. His parents had sent him abroad, altering the course of what could have been. At this revelation, Sang-yan's expression flickered, subtle, almost imperceptible. Before Xiang Lang could elaborate further, Sang-yan cut him off, announcing the next round's score. This time, he lost. Su Hawan, thrilled to finally see Sang-yan on the losing end, seized the opportunity to make him play truth or dare. Drawing a card for him, he read the question aloud. What was the most recent city you flew to? Without hesitation, Sang-yan answered, Yihei. The answer landed heavily. Yifan's head turned sharply toward him. Yihei, the city where she had attended college after high school. She stared at him, caught off guard by the unexpected answer. He had been there? When? Why? Before the thoughts could settle, Sang-yan abruptly stood up. With a vague excuse about heading home early, he stepped away from the gathering. Yifan watched him go, still unsettled by what he had just revealed. Instead of going home, Sang-yan found himself on the second floor of the bar, cigarette between his lips, the ember glowing dimly in the dark. Leaning against the railing, he exhaled slowly. Footsteps approached from behind. Su Hawan's voice broke the silence, casual but probing. At first, he simply pointed out the contradiction. Sang-yan had said he was going home, yet here he was. Then, without preamble, he brought up Xiang Lang. Still, Sang-yan said nothing, taking another drag of his cigarette. Undeterred, Su Hawan pressed further, asking the question directly. Did he still have feelings for Yifan? He didn't wait for an answer. Instead, he continued, reasoning that if Yifan and Xiang Lang ever had feelings for each other, they would have acted on them long ago. Yet, Sang-yan remained cold and distant, unwilling to acknowledge anything. It was as if he had been handed an opportunity on a silver platter, yet refused to take it. Annoyed at his friend's silence, Su Hawan boldly suggested that Sang-yan seek his advice. After all, he prided himself on being a ladies' man. At this, Sang-yan finally turned to him, his gaze sharp, indifferent, and utterly unimpressed. His words, when they came, were brutally direct. His response was blunt. He wasn't crazy enough to have a heart-to-heart with him, and Su Hawan was far from being a so-called ladies' man. The statement landed like a stone, knocking Su Hawan's confidence straight to the ground. Flustered, he lashed back, reminding Sang-yan that just because his ex had cheated on him didn't mean he was any less experienced. Even if his ex had betrayed him, he was still rich and handsome. That should have been enough. But, as he glanced at Sang-yan, also rich, also handsome, yet still single and living with his first love as a mere roommate, he realized something. Perhaps wealth and looks weren't the only things that mattered. A few days later, Yifan's colleague informed her that a video of Sang-yan's interview had gone viral. Concerned, she asked if it would cause any trouble for him, but her colleague reassured her that since his face was censored, it wouldn't be an issue. That evening, when Yifan returned home, she immediately noticed that every appliance in the house was brand new. It made her wonder if Sang-yan had finally come home after being absent since their last dinner. She knew the little prince had high living standards, but she grew worried about the cost, realizing that she would also have to split the expenses. Her phone buzzed, showing a notification of Sang-yan's viral video. It was circulating everywhere, with people commenting on how he managed to be both handsome, arrogant, and miserable at the same time. She found it amusing and was quietly enjoying it when she suddenly noticed Sang-yan nearby. Quickly, she closed the video before he could catch her watching it. She brought up the topic of splitting the expenses, asking him to send his share. Without much reaction, he simply agreed, his tone distant as if he was ignoring her. Before she could dwell on it, Siqiao called, and their conversation shifted to how they would be spending New Year's. Yi Fan casually mentioned that she had no plans and just wanted to rest, sleeping through the occasion. Unbeknownst to her, Sang Yan, who had been silent until now, was listening to every word. On New Year's Eve, Yi Fan sat comfortably on the sofa, flipping through TV channels, enjoying the quiet night. A message from Sang Yan popped up. He wouldn't be coming home, so she could help herself to the food. Not long after, another message arrived from her mother, asking if she would come home for the celebration. Yi Fan simply replied that she had work, declining the invitation. She didn't want to return to that house. A sudden knock at the door startled her. Confused about who it could be at this hour, she peeked through the peephole before hurriedly opening the door. Sang Yan stood there. As he stepped inside, she hesitated before asking why he had come back. Casually, he responded that the house was too crowded with guests, and he had nowhere to sleep. The atmosphere between them was slightly awkward as they sat watching the New Year's program in silence. Suddenly, Sang Yan stood up, causing Yi Fan to jolt slightly at the unexpected movement. He headed toward the kitchen, and as she followed, he mentioned that he had accidentally prepared too much food and needed help finishing it. He carefully added each ingredient, pausing to confirm her preferences, as if he was making it specifically for her. They soon sat together, sharing the meal. As Yi Fan took her first bite, Sang Yan watched her closely, as if waiting for something. Finally, she complimented the food, and he exhaled quietly, as though that was the reaction he had been hoping for. She teased him about his cooking skills, and he responded with his usual confidence, claiming there was nothing he couldn't do. However, she pointed out that he clearly hadn't mastered making a single portion of noodles. Yi Fan stood up to get more noodles, and as she moved, Sang Yan observed her with a faint smile. He knew she was home alone and wouldn't eat properly if left to herself. He couldn't let that happen. As the clock struck midnight, marking the arrival of the new year, Yi Fan glanced at him. He was still focused on his game, seemingly uninterested. She stood up, ready to head to her room, but before leaving, she turned back. "Happy New Year, Sang Yan." He didn't look up, still engrossed in his game, and casually returned the greeting. But as the door to her room shut behind her, he finally lifted his head, a faint smile lingering on his face. As Yi Fan lay in bed, she realized that this was their first reunion meal together, and a sense of nostalgia washed over her. 7 years ago, when she transferred to Baiju from Nanwu due to her constantly changing living situation, she had once received an unexpected message from Sang Yan. He had come to Baiju to visit her and was waiting. Without hesitation, she rushed out, and there he was, standing before her, smiling as brightly as ever. That was the first time they had a meal together. From then on, Sang Yan would occasionally visit, and without fail, they would sit down for a meal. It became a quiet ritual between them, one that neither questioned. They never delved into personal matters, never talked about the things left unspoken. They simply ate, and once the meal was finished, Sang Yan would leave. Over time, it felt less like coincidence and more like an unspoken excuse, an unacknowledged reason for them to meet. And tonight, it felt just like one of those days. The next day, Sang Yan brought his sister, Sang Zi, home, informing Yi Fan beforehand. As soon as Sang Zi saw Yi Fan, she turned abruptly to Sang Yan, her eyes filled with curiosity. Without hesitation, she asked if Yi Fan was his girlfriend. A brief silence followed. Sang Yan was so taken aback that he failed to respond. Before he could recover, Yi Fan smiled and clarified that they were merely roommates. Sang Ji's expression fell, visibly disappointed that such a pretty girl was only his brother's roommate. Still intrigued, Sang Ji pressed further, asking if Yi Fan had been her brother's high school classmate. Yi Fan was surprised that Sang Ji even remembered her, considering they had only met once, when she was lost. But to Yi Fan's surprise, Sang Ji admitted the truth. That day, she had not been lost at all. It had all been orchestrated by Sang Yan. 8 years ago, Sang Yan had pleaded with Sang Ji to pretend she was lost in front of the girl standing by the library. Initially, Sang Ji refused, but when he bribed her with the promise of ice cream, she hesitantly agreed. With some reluctance, she rehearsed her lines before being nudged forward by her brother. Meanwhile, Sang Yan stood nervously behind the wall, anxiously awaiting the outcome. But when she finally reached Yi Fan, standing before her and seeing the genuine concern in her eyes, Sang Ji froze, completely forgetting everything she had practiced. Sang Yan, watching from a distance, panicked at the sight of them staring blankly at each other. Desperate, he made a slight noise to alert Sang Ji. Snapping out of her daze, she hastily pointed in a random direction, claiming she had lost her way. Yi Fan instinctively took her hand and led her in that direction, only to find Sang Yan waiting there, as if by pure coincidence. Back at present, Yi Fan handed Sang Ji a pair of extra home slippers, and assured her that if she needed anything, she could just ask before retreating to her room. As she left, Sang Ji, lazily snacking, leaned against the kitchen counter and eyed her brother curiously. With a casual tone, she asked why he was living with a girl. Sang Yan, focused on chopping vegetables, responded indifferently, dismissing the need to answer such a question. Unfazed, Sang Ji smirked and offhandedly remarked that it must be because he liked Yi Fan. her brother remained silent. Taking his lack of denial as confirmation, she went on, teasing that while she was on his side, Yi Fan was way out of his league. He should, at the very least, have some self-awareness. Sang-yan finally turned to her, his expression unreadable. Self-awareness? He echoed, his tone laced with amusement. In his usual nonchalant manner, he scoffed that it wasn't him who needed self-awareness. Rather, it was the people who fell for him. Sang-ji kept reading, ignoring her brother as if saying whatever. Later, as they set the table for dinner, Sang-ji glanced at Yi Fan's closed door and asked if he was going to invite her. Sang-yan shrugged, saying that if she was so concerned, she could call Yi Fan herself. Rolling her eyes, Sang-ji ignored him and began eating. As Sang-yan sipped his drink, he lazily remarked how people should at least be kind to those who were good to them. His meaning was clear. Sang-ji sighed, reading between the lines. He wanted Yi Fan to join them, but his pride wouldn't let him admit it. Resigned, she stood up and knocked on Yi Fan's door, inviting her to dinner. Yi Fan initially declined, not wanting to intrude on a family meal. But Sang-ji lowered her voice and whispered that having dinner alone with her brother was unbearable. Finally, Yi Fan relented and joined them. As they ate, the two girls chatted comfortably, and Sang-ji took the opportunity to complain about her brother's annoying habits. The conversation naturally shifted, and Yi Fan casually asked which university Sang-ji planned to attend. She mentioned that she was considering either Manhwa or Yihai University but hadn't decided yet. From personal experience, Yi Fan noted that Yihai was far, and its climate was completely different from Manhwa. Hearing this, Sang-ji's eyes widened in surprise. She hadn't realized Yi Fan had graduated from Yihai. Curious, she asked what Yi Fan had majored in. Mass communication, Yi Fan answered. Sang-ji frowned. But Manhwa has a better mass communication program. Why did you choose Yihai instead? The question made both Yi Fan and Sang-yan pause. Sang-yan set down his drink, crossed his arms, and turned to her with a pointed look. He too wanted to hear the answer to that. Avoiding his gaze, Yi Fan explained that mass communication hadn't been her first choice. She had initially wanted a different major, but didn't get into her preferred program, so she chose it later. The atmosphere shifted slightly, tension creeping in. Sensing the change, Sang-ji swiftly changed the subject. After dinner, as they cleared the table, she hesitated before asking Yi Fan a question. If she didn't want to answer, she could ignore it. When Yi Fan nodded, Sang-ji leaned in and asked if she had dated Sang-yan in high school. Yi Fan chuckled at the unexpected question and denied it. Sang-ji, however, mentioned that her parents had once hinted that her brother had been dating someone. Before she could say anything more, Sang-yan called out, insisting it was time to take her home before it got too late. As they left, Yi Fan's mind lingered on Sang-ji's words. His parents had mentioned a girl. Could they have been referring to her? After all, there had been a time when the rumors about them had escalated so much that their parents had even been called in. Even if it had been a misunderstanding, the rumors never truly faded. Inside the car, Sang-ji confronted her brother, questioning whether his behavior was his way of flirting. Sang-yan merely glanced at her without responding. Undeterred, Sang-ji continued, pressing him on why he was acting so cold toward Yi Fan. She pointed out that Yi Fan was pretty and completely out of his league, while he was unemployed, indifferent, and inconsiderate. The chances of a girl like Yi Fan falling for him were slim, she argued, adding that women usually preferred men who were gentle, polite, and attentive. Sang-yan finally raised an eyebrow, asking if her ideal type was Dwan Jaksu, his old college roommate. Sang-ji's face turned red instantly. Avoiding his gaze, she turned away, refusing to answer. A few days later, Yi Fan finally gave in to her mother's persistent requests and visited her home. Her mother greeted her warmly, excitedly mentioning that she could finally meet her younger brother. She added that Yi Fan's stepsister now lived on campus and that her stepfather was out, but their aunt was there to see her. At the mention of her aunt, Yi Fan's expression shifted, her eyes widening slightly. As the door opened, her aunt welcomed her with a practiced smile, but Yi Fan's demeanor immediately became guarded. They sat together, and her aunt casually inquired about her job and life. When Yi Fan's mother stepped away to get fruit, her aunt's tone turned calculating. She commented on Yi Fan's looks, suggesting that a pretty girl like her didn't need to work so hard. She then casually proposed an arrangement. Her uncle had a wealthy friend who, despite being a little older, would take good care of her. As if that wasn't enough, she hinted that Yi Fan should contribute financially to her cousin's upcoming wedding, given how their family had taken care of her all these years. Yi Fan remained silent at first, listening without expression. Then, in a calm voice, she mentioned that she also knew someone wealthy, someone who happened to be interested in men. She could introduce him to her cousin. Her aunt's face twisted in fury as she began shouting, but Yi Fan was unfazed. She stood up and declared that she would never come back again. Fulfilling her father's last wish to look after her mother had been her duty, but now, she was done. From now on, they could consider her as good as dead. Without waiting for a response, she walked out. Back at home, Sang-yan sat on the couch, casually playing his game as usual. Yi Fan entered without a word, heading straight to her room and shutting the door behind her. He glanced up briefly, noting her unusual behavior. Something was wrong. After a moment, he picked up his phone and sent her a message. Hours passed. It was now past 2:30 a.m., and he still hadn't received a reply. He got up, walked to the bathroom, and placed his phone on high volume before stepping into the shower. Every so often, he peeked at the screen, but there was still no response. Finishing his shower, he checked again, wondering if she had simply fallen asleep. Just as he stepped out, he froze. Yi Fan was standing there. With his usual smirk, he teased her, asking if she had been waiting outside his door to catch a glimpse of a handsome man fresh out of the shower. But before he could finish his words, Yi Fan suddenly rushed forward, straight into his arms. His eyes widened in shock. He looked down. This wasn't a dream. It was Yi Fan, and she was hugging him. His heart pounded loudly against his chest. He could see the curve of her back against him, feel the warmth of her body pressed close. Instinctively, he started to lift his hand, hesitating just before touching her. He gulped. He couldn't do it. Attempting to retreat, he took a small step back, trying to create some distance, but Yi Fan only tightened her hold around him, refusing to let go. He remained frozen, staring down at the girl who was now snuggled into his embrace. His mind raced, struggling to process what was happening. Finally, breaking the silence, he spoke, his voice lower than usual. "What are you doing? Can you explain yourself at least? How long do you plan to keep hugging me?" After a moment, she slowly released him, straightening herself. She mumbled something incoherent under her breath, barely loud enough to hear. He tilted his head, trying to catch her words, but before he could ask, she turned away abruptly and walked straight to her room. He called out her name, confused, but she ignored him, shutting the door behind her. Sang-yan remained standing in place, staring blankly at the closed door. His expression shifted from bewilderment to something unreadable. A faint blush crept onto his face as he let out a deep sigh, rubbing the back of his neck in frustration. The next morning, Yi Fan woke up feeling refreshed. Meanwhile, Sang-yan sat at the breakfast table, exhausted, having barely slept. His gaze was fixed intently on her door. Checking her phone, Yi Fan finally noticed his message from the night before. Confused, she asked what he had meant. Sang-yan, still at a loss for words, simply sent a question mark in response. On the other end, Yi Fan, clueless about the situation, replied with 3 question marks of her own. Frustrated but still unsure how to bring it up, he finally sent a thumbs-up emoji, ending the conversation. As he set his phone down, his expression was a mix of frustration and disbelief. The ever-cool and indifferent Sang-yan was now blushing, unable to shake off the memory of last night. After some time, Yi Fan emerged from her room for breakfast. Noticing Sang-yan still standing there, she casually asked about his earlier message. He stared at her for a moment, his expression unreadable, before suddenly bursting into laughter. Amusement flickering in his eyes. "Are you really going to pretend like nothing happened?" Yi Fan blinked, momentarily puzzled. She assumed he was upset because she hadn't greeted him the night before. With a slight frown, she sincerely apologized, promising to be more mindful of it in the future. Sang-yan's laughter faded, his expression turning serious. He met her gaze and spoke firmly. "This isn't something small to me. If something like that happens again in the future, I expect an explanation." Yi Fan stared at him, confusion evident on her face. Why was he making such a big deal out of her not saying hello? For Yi Fan, it had felt like a dream, one where she wandered alone in a dark forest, unable to find her way out. Just as fear threatened to consume her, a brilliant light appeared before her, warm and radiant like the sun. Instinctively, she reached out, embracing it tightly, basking in its comforting warm glow. Later that evening, as Yi Fan returned home, she found Sang-yan in the elevator, engaged in a casual conversation with someone. As they entered the apartment, he continued speaking to his friend about a girl who had hugged his friend unexpectedly, only to act as if nothing had happened afterward. Curious, he turned to Yi Fan, seeking a woman's perspective on the matter. Yi Fan responded indifferently, stating that it depended on their relationship. Amused, Sang-yan pressed on, elaborating that the girl was head over heels for his friend. Yi Fan chuckled, remarking that if she truly had feelings for him, it was natural for her to act that way. A smug smile curled on Sang-yan's lips as he entertained the thought, relishing the possibility. But before he could fully indulge in his fantasy, Yi Fan added that his friend might also be overthinking the situation. Her words instantly shattered his illusion, erasing the grin from his face. That night, as Yi Fan retired to her room, Sang-yan lounged on the sofa, aimlessly flipping through television channels, frustration evident in his restless demeanor. Perhaps he truly was overanalyzing the situation. Maybe it meant nothing at all. The following morning, Yi Fan visited the police station for work. As she and her colleague discussed potential roommate replacements, she noticed a young man being interviewed. He looked oddly familiar. Sensing her gaze, he turned to her, asking if something was on his face. Flustered, she admitted he seemed familiar. Without hesitation, he took a piece of paper, scribbled something, and handed it to her. It was his signature. Confused, but assuming he must be a celebrity, she awkwardly thanked him. Later that day, Sang-yan messaged Yi Fan, instructing her to meet him at a shopping center. While waiting outside, she scrolled through her phone, searching for information on the mysterious man she had met earlier. She was so engrossed in her search that she didn't notice Sang-yan approaching from behind. He leaned in, whispering in her ear if that was her type. Startled, she turned to see him looking at her phone. She pulled away and asked if he hadn't finished shopping yet, but he entered the market and asked her to help. As they entered the store, Sang-yeon took charge of the shopping, effortlessly filling their basket, while Yi Fan meticulously compared prices. Amused by her frugality, he teased her, likening her intense focus to exam preparation. With a smirk, he plucked an item from her hands and dropped it into the cart, dismissing her overthinking. At the checkout counter, Yi Fan casually inquired about his plans to move out, as it had already been 2 months since they began living together. Sang-yeon, ever smug, asked if she was eager to get rid of him. She clarified that she simply needed to prepare in case he left so she wouldn't have to cover the full rent alone. As they exited the store, Sang-yeon carried the heavier bags while Yi Fan insisted on helping. He handed her an umbrella instead, instructing her to ensure he didn't get wet. As they walked, he noticed raindrops landing on her hair, and subtly urged her to tilt the umbrella more toward herself, making an excuse about his view being obstructed. Though confused, Yi Fan complied with his request. That evening, at Yi Fan's suggestion, they watched a horror movie. While she thoroughly enjoyed it, Sang-yeon was scared, struggling to watch it. As she prepared to head to bed, he taunted her, questioning whether she was afraid to sleep alone after watching the film. She dismissed his teasing, but before she could leave, he called out again, asking her to sit beside him, insisting that if she was scared too, he was there. She knew she wasn't scared, but the way he said it made her wonder, was it possible that he was? Her mind drifted back to high school when they had watched a horror movie in class. Back then, Sang-yeon had simply slept through the entire film. Lost in thought, she suddenly realized how close he had leaned in. As she turned her head, their faces were mere inches apart. Before she could react, he nonchalantly reached for his drink, breaking the tension. Her phone rang, breaking the moment entirely. Seeing her aunt's name on the screen, she immediately declined the call, blocking the number before wishing Sang-yeon a good night. Meanwhile, Sang-yeon received a message from Soo-hwan, asking if he planned to move in now that his apartment renovations were complete. Staring at Yi Fan's closed door, Sang-yeon hesitated. He wasn't ready to leave yet. He needed more time. At 3 a.m., Yi Fan's door creaked open. She walked out, heading toward the living room. Sang-yeon, still awake, watched her curiously. When she remained silent, he called out to her, but there was no response. A chill ran down his spine as she continued walking, completely ignoring him. Growing uneasy, he waved his hand in front of her face. Still no reaction. Instead, she walked past him and returned to her room, shutting the door behind her. The next morning, Yi Fan greeted him cheerfully, as if nothing had happened. At the breakfast table, Sang-yeon stared at her, debating whether to bring up the incident. In the end, he decided against it, at least for now. When Yi Fan met Sixiao, she mentioned that she had recently encountered a girl named Jenny, who used to be crazy about Sang-yeon during their high school days. One day, Jenny had called Sang-yeon aside and questioned him about whether he was truly interested in Yi Fan. As usual, Sang-yeon refused to answer, simply stating that it had nothing to do with her. Jenny had then noticed Yi Fan standing behind them and pretending to be naive, said she didn't believe such rumors before boldly proposing to Sang-yeon. He too had noticed someone behind him, turned to see that it was Yi Fan, and then turned back to Jenny to reject her proposal. Yi Fan still remembered how Jenny had continued to pursue Sang-yeon for a long time afterward, but he had firmly rejected her each time. Sixiao had then turned to Yi Fan, questioning if there had really been nothing between her and Sang-yeon. She spoke about how Sang-yeon, despite being aloof, was undeniably handsome, and how he had treated Yi Fan during high school. Everyone knew how much he liked her, so much so that no one dared to offend Yi Fan. She agreed that all of it was indeed true. Sixiao, curious, asked if she had ever felt anything for him. Even if she hadn't, she pointed out, anyone could have been moved by his affectionate actions. Yi Fan had silently taken a sip of her coffee before calmly admitting that she had feelings for him, startling Sixiao, who had asked again in disbelief. Yi Fan had nodded quietly, biting her lips. Sixiao had then asked whether she still had feelings for him. Yi Fan replied that it had been a long time, and it didn't matter anymore. But Sixiao disagreed, pointing out that they were living under the same roof and old feelings could always resurface. Yi Fan, however, was certain it wouldn't happen, as he would be moving out soon anyway. Sixiao had then raised a more serious question, why they hadn't gotten together back then, despite having mutual feelings. Yi Fan explained that people always told her she was a distant girl, someone who didn't keep in touch often. She had also heard others say that she lacked empathy and warmth. When Sixiao pressed her about why she believed what others said, Yi Fan said she wasn't simply believing others, it was how she truly felt when she was with Sang-yeon. He was someone who deserved more than she could give. A bright boy who deserved someone capable of pouring their whole heart into him. And in her eyes, she was not that girl. Sixiao assured her that she was beautiful and considerate, questioning why she would put herself down like that. Yi Fan recalled an incident from the time she had stayed at her aunt's place. Her aunt had made a good soup for her son. When her cousin declined to drink it, and asked her aunt to give it to Yi Fan instead, her aunt had said that something this good was not meant for Yi Fan. At the time, she hadn't thought much of it. But when she saw how good Sang-yan was, she began to believe that she didn't deserve his love. Si Chiao asked about how Sang-yan felt now, but Yi Fan was certain that he no longer had any feelings for her, because she had hurt him even though he had always treated her so well. She remembered the day their parents were called. It was her aunt and uncle who had shown up. Sang-yan had seen them, but he hadn't been able to do anything besides watch her from a distance. When they reached home, her aunt and uncle had scolded her harshly. She had apologized, but they didn't believe her and said they had no obligation to take care of her. Tears had streamed down her face as she called her mother, pleading for her to take her back home. She begged to be allowed to live with her younger sister, but her mother only scolded her and ended the call. She had stared at the screen with tears falling down her cheeks. All she had wanted was a home, but there had been no one to take her home. Then her phone rang again. This time it was Sang-yan. He asked with concern if she had been scolded and apologized, saying he never expected a mere rumor to cause her so much trouble. But with a trembling voice, she had only said harsh words, asking him to stop bothering her anymore. After that day, they had never spoken again at school. When Yi Fan transferred to Bayu, Sang-yan had regularly sent his scores to her. Later, he started visiting her from time to time, but they never talked about that call. They simply stopped discussing anything personal and would only eat noodles together in silence. Si Chiao had tried to assure her that it wasn't a big issue and that she could talk to him, but for Yi Fan, it had already been too long. Still, Si Chiao insisted. It's never too late to apologize. When Yi Fan returned home, she glanced at Sang-yan, unsure how to bring up the topic weighing on her mind. Instead, she chose to ease into the conversation with a random subject, casually asking about his work apart from owning the bar. Sang-yan, engrossed in his game, responded without much thought, questioning why she was suddenly interested. Yi Fan explained that she hadn't seen him going to work regularly. Confidently, Sang-yan assured her that plenty of companies were eager to hire him. He was simply letting them fight it out while he took his time to decide. Shifting the topic, Yi Fan asked about the status of his house renovation. Sang-yan informed her that it was still ongoing and had been delayed due to the festive season. Moreover, he added that the place still smelled unpleasant, so he wouldn't be moving out anytime soon. Suddenly, Yi Fan pointed toward the television, asking what the man on screen was doing. Sang-yan glanced at the TV, watched for a moment, and then turned to her, remarking that the man seemed to be sleepwalking, probably why he wouldn't remember anything later. He made the comment while observing her reaction. Yi Fan nodded in agreement, her eyes still fixed on the screen. Curious, Sang-yan asked how she knew about sleepwalking. Yi Fan replied truthfully that she used to sleepwalk in the past, though it hadn't happened in a long time. Raising a brow, Sang-yan questioned how she was so sure. Yi Fan turned to him, surprised, and asked if he had seen her do it. He nodded with certainty. Alarmed, she immediately asked what she had done during those episodes and whether he had been scared. But Sang-yan replied with calm assurance that she had simply walked out, sat for a while, and then gone back to her room. And as for fear, he wasn't someone to be easily frightened. Letting out a sigh, Yi Fan asked him to just ignore her if it happened again. But Sang-yan revealed that it had already happened twice. Yi Fan's eyes widened, and she asked what she had done the second time. He paused for a moment, his expression turning thoughtful as if trying to remember. He said she had first run toward him and hugged him tightly. Yi Fan's breath caught, waiting for him to continue. Then, with a slight smirk, he added that she had kissed him. Her face turned red instantly. He looked at her with amusement, trying not to laugh, then leaned in slightly, teasingly pointing out that she was blushing. Embarrassed, Yi Fan averted her gaze, mumbling something about having spicy food earlier. After a moment's silence, she asked whether he was exaggerating. Sang-yan looked at her with mock offense, questioning how she could accuse him of lying when he was the one being taken advantage of. Curious, Yi Fan asked why he hadn't told her earlier. Sang-yan said he had tried but couldn't bring himself to, and perhaps her actions were a reflection of what she truly wanted deep down. In a sly tone, Yi Fan asked where exactly she had kissed him. The question seemed to take him by surprise. He hesitated, then slowly raised his hand and pointed to the corner of his lips. But Yi Fan, thinking rationally, raised suspicion, given their height difference. How could she have reached there? Sang-yan sighed, saying it was fine if she didn't want to accept the truth. Determined, Yi Fan stood up and told him to help her recreate the scene. He smirked at her boldness, teasing that she just wanted another opportunity to take advantage of him. She refuted firmly, claiming it was just for verification. With no choice left, Sang-yan stood up and faced her. As they stood facing each other, Yi Fan noticed the considerable difference in their height. She pointed it out, questioning how she could have kissed him there without tiptoeing. Both of them looked down, then up again, only to realize how close their faces had become, barely an inch apart. Their eyes met, lingering a second too long, drifting unconsciously from each other's gaze to lips. The proximity made the air thick with tension, their heartbeats quickening under the weight of the moment. Abruptly, Yi Fan stepped back and turned away, her face flushed red like a ripe tomato. She admitted he was right, and that she now believed him. Then, trying to cover her embarrassment, she told him to simply punch her next time it happened, and save himself the trouble. With that, she hurriedly walked away. Sang-yan remained standing there, watching her retreating figure, his own face and ears tinged with red. He hadn't expected such a reaction, not from a lie he had added so casually, without imagining how the situation would unfold afterward. Inside her room, Yi Fan lay on the bed, tossing and turning, unable to fall asleep. Her mind kept replaying the earlier conversation. She couldn't deny the possibility she had always liked Sang-yan's dimple for a long time. It was entirely believable that, in a moment of unconscious impulse, she might have kissed him there. But regardless of how real it felt, she resolved firmly that such a thing shouldn't happen again. Determined to prevent any further embarrassment, she dragged a chair and placed it right in front of the door, hoping it would stop her from walking out during the night. The following day, she took an early leave from work and went to visit her father. It was his death anniversary, a day that carried a quiet weight for her. Later that evening, when Sang-yan returned home, he found her in the kitchen preparing dinner. She asked him if he'd already eaten. If not, he could join her. They sat down to eat, but the meal passed in silence. Neither spoke a word. The atmosphere was heavy, and Sang-yan noticed something different about her demeanor. Subtle, but undeniable. Still, he chose not to pry, respecting her space. That night, as the house grew quiet, Yi Fan once again walked out of her room. Sang-yan was still awake and noticed her movement. Seeing her slow, deliberate steps, he instantly assumed she was sleepwalking again. Her posture was eerily calm, almost possessed, and she moved straight ahead without hesitation. When he lifted his hand to block her path, she didn't react, just quietly altered her direction and walked over to the sofa, where she sat down in silence. Curious and concerned, Sang-yan sat beside her, watching closely. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, she turned her face toward him. He smiled faintly, assuming she was finally aware of his presence. But before he could process what was happening, she moved, suddenly climbing on top of him, one hand resting on his shoulder, the other pressing gently against his chest. Her eyes held a vacant, faraway look, yet her actions were deliberate. Sang-yan froze, stunned by the unexpected closeness. Her hand reached up, softly caressing his cheek, specifically the spot he had joked about earlier. His heartbeat quickened as he watched her lips slowly inch closer. And this time, she truly kissed him, right at the corner of his lips. His eyes widened in disbelief, breath caught in his throat. His hand rose instinctively, wanting to hold her, but he hesitated. He couldn't do it, not unless she was fully aware, fully conscious. Instead, he simply closed his eyes and allowed himself to feel the warmth of the moment, letting the sensation settle deep within him. Even though the arms supporting him trembled slightly, after a moment, she slowly pulled away from him, her expression still distant and unreadable. Sang-yan remained in place, his heart still racing from the unexpected intimacy. He looked at her intently, his voice laced with disbelief as he spoke, quietly pointing out what had just happened. Yet, she offered no response, her gaze unfocused, her steps already turning away from him. Without a word, she began to walk back toward her room. Sang-yan quickly followed, questioning if she was really just going to walk away after kissing him like that. But she didn't react, didn't look back, didn't pause. Just continued moving forward as if nothing had happened. Instinctively, as she neared the door, Sang-yan reached out and gently moved the chair that was placed in her way, still mindful that she might trip over it. She entered her room and quietly sat down on the edge of the bed, still silent, her posture still. Sang-yan stood at the doorway, speaking more to himself than to her now, leaving behind words she wouldn't hear tonight. He reminded her, half in jest, half in truth, that he was never someone who gave anything away for free. So if she had kissed him, then Wen Yi Fan would have to remember she owed him now. And when she woke up, she'd have to make it up to him. With that, he turned and walked away. Next day, an alarm went off to remind Wen Yi Fan that it was time to wake up. The alarm was turned off, and the beautiful lady rose from the bed, but noticed that it was odd that the chair in her bedroom wasn't where she remembered leaving it the night before. Getting up from bed, she spotted Sang-yan in the kitchen, and she asked the man if she had walked around in her sleep the other night. Apparently, she had, but she'd also already told him to ignore her if he ever saw her in that state. Sang-yan turned to look at her, asking if she was trying to set boundaries. But Wen Yi Fan insisted that it was just a reminder. Anyway, Sang-yan was done cooking noodles, and he wanted to share some, so she happily joined in. As they were eating, she asked again if she had done anything inappropriate the other night. However, the man said that she'd not made a repeat of anything she'd done before. When she was about to sigh in relief, he smirked and said that she had done something worse instead, which obviously horrified her. Then, he smiled, scolding her and telling her to get her mind out of any inappropriate thoughts she was having. Wen Yi Fan so desperately wanted to know what she had done. She had to press Sang-yan a lot to tell her, and he stared at her, or rather at her red lips for a long time. But in the end, he could not bring himself to say it, avoiding her gaze. He made an excuse, because he had been feeling rather good lately, so he did not really want to talk about this kind of thing with her after all. However, he would let her make it up to him little by little over time. She insisted on just making it up to him all at once, but apparently, now was not the time according to Sang-yan. Now Wen Yi Fan was worried as she tried to imagine what could have been worse than kissing him, which she had already done the last time. She asked bluntly if he wanted money. He froze, clearly stunned by her words. His mind flashed back to what the waiter had said earlier, that the money she'd given was a hookup fee for him. A blush crept across his face. Was she seriously mistaking him for some kind of hookup guy? Wen Yi Fan, realizing too late how her words could be misunderstood, fell silent. The air between them grew heavy with awkward tension, as neither of them knew what to say next. Later, in the office, two people waved and greeted hello to the beautiful Yi Fan. She was introduced to the interns, Li Feng and Cheng Mu. Cheng seemed familiar, so she asked if they had met before. Apparently, the boy had been in a movie once before. The new intern had not expected his senior to be a fan, and he blushed shyly. Well, with introductions over, it was time for the interns to move along. Later, Yi Fan got a message from Sang Yan, a payment of the rent since they'd be living together. He had paid a little more than he should. She insisted on sending back the extra amount, but he would not let her transfer the extra amount, making her owe him. Then she wondered just how long he planned on staying, and Sang Yan revealed that he would stay until she paid back what she owed. After all, in the middle of the night, letting her inner desires get the best of her, she had tried to take advantage of him. While trying to deal with that scandalous message, the intern, Cheng, suddenly approached and asked if they could be friends on WeChat. Seeing another intern asking for the same, Yi Fan agreed. There would also be a party tonight to welcome the newcomers, and the boy, Cheng, could not stop looking at Yi Fan, and as if seeing his first crush, he blushed. Work ended, and one of the girls was gushing over how adorable Cheng was. He was so cute for an intern, and he always seemed to be looking in their direction. The other girl couldn't believe that Yi Fan wasn't interested in the cute intern, so she asked curiously, "Then what's your type?" Yi Fan paused, unsure how to answer, until Sang Yan's face suddenly flashed through her mind. Those striking blue eyes, the way he looked at her. Her cheeks warmed, and her ears turned red just thinking about him. But then she realized she hadn't replied to her roommate yet and got busy doing that. It turned out he wanted to talk later, and she had to pretend like that did not upset her. She would return home late anyway, so that was fine. Just then, her colleague called out that they had arrived. But when she looked up, her heart skipped a beat. It was Sang Yan's bar. As they made it into the bar, all the juniors gathered around as they ate and drank to welcome them. Cheng casually mentioned that he had met Sang Yan once back in university, and that he'd even attended their graduation banquet. Apparently, Sang Yan and Duan Jiaxu had been the two most well-known guys in their batch. One was a strict non-drinker, while the other could down a dozen bottles without even getting tipsy. Curious, Cheng's friends asked, "So who was the one with the insane alcohol tolerance?" Cheng didn't even hesitate. Sang Yan. Yi Fan's eyes widened, surprised by the answer. She hadn't expected that. Cheng went on, his tone growing more thoughtful. "The day I saw him, though, he seemed different. He barely said a word, just sat there in a really dark mood. He only spoke once the entire night." Well, the celebration carried on, and it was getting late, so Yi Fan stood up to go. Suddenly, Cheng was also ready to go, and he even offered to walk back together with her. As they were walking, the boy slipped, but the beautiful lady was able to quickly steady him from falling. Yi Fan had just asked if he was okay when a large hand suddenly grabbed the back of Cheng's hoodie. Both of them turned, only to see someone gripping Cheng firmly by the collar. It was Sang Yan. He stood there, his tie slightly loosened, eyes sharp and cold, radiating a quiet, dangerous intensity. With a voice that sent a chill down their spines, he offered to help the boy, though the threat in his tone made it clear that help was the last thing on his mind. Then he turned, those brilliant dark eyes shining with a menacing aura. He smacked Yi Fan's hands away so that she would no longer be touching the intern. Then, he grabbed the boy and led him away. Once they were out in the park, he told little Cheng to stop messing around. He had been using that trick for years and years, so he knew exactly what the intern was trying to do. It was really embarrassing for the fluffy-haired boy as he called out Sang Yan's name. Surprised, Sang Yan raised an eyebrow. "How do you know my name?" Cheng quickly explained, "I'm from Nanwu too. I've seen you around before." Trying to recover, he added with a sheepish grin, "You know, whether a trick works or not. Depends on the person using it." Sang Yan smirked, eyes glinting. "If that's true," he said coolly, "then it's completely impossible for you to pull it off." Soon Yi Fan showed up just about then, and the tall, dark and handsome man noticed that she was a little tipsy. So, he told her to get in the car. He also loudly declared that Cheng seemed quite tipsy too, so he grabbed the boy and tossed him into the car. The boy eagerly called out to Yi Fan, asking her to sit beside him, but before she could respond, Sang Yan slammed the back door shut. With a calm, almost pointed tone, he told Yi Fan to take the front passenger seat. Purely, of course, out of consideration for Cheng's comfort. After all, he was just that thoughtful. The bustling continued in the city, and Yi Fan looked out the car window, realizing that it had not been the best idea to guzzle alcohol on an empty stomach. Kindly, her driver today noticed her situation and lowered the window. Startled, she turned to him to express her gratitude, but he looked away as if he was shy from his own action towards her. Then, she recalled Cheng's story from the bar and wondered why Sang Yan had drunk so much that day. Back in high school, she had seen the man drink before. The young version of Sang Yan had such a sweet smile, and the party had lasted quite a while into the night, with lots of treats and food to eat. The younger Sang Yan had looked around after a while, and then he noticed Yi Fan leaving. So, in typical high school boy fashion, he followed her. She asked if he was going home as well, and he was. She would be going the other way, so she figured they would meet again next Monday. Suddenly, the boy had the audacity to act like he was feeling faint. Yi Fan worried that he was drunk, and she asked if she should call his friends or his parents. Obviously, he just wanted her to nurse him back to health. Then, she let go of his hand, and she told him to sit for a moment and sober up, so that she could continue on her way. Well, the drunk act had not produced the results that Sang-yan had been going for, and he was left sitting on the stairs by himself, without Yi Fan to cradle his head. He sat there dejected for a few moments, but was surprised when she returned after a while, asking if he could walk. She really had come back, and he was speechless for a moment, but he really stuck to his drunk act, claiming that he could not stand. The girl tried to draw him up, but he was frankly way too heavy to even lift, even though he pushed for her to keep trying and to try harder. At any rate, the boy finally threw in some help and bounced to his feet, looking deeply into her beautiful eyes. The two glanced away from each other, cheeks flushed with a soft blush. Shyly, he asked if he could lean on her. She blinked in confusion. Couldn't she just hold his arm instead? But he insisted, saying that if she really wanted to stabilize him, she'd need to hold both of his arms. She hesitated. Holding him like that, wouldn't it feel like a hug? But in the end, she agreed. After all, he had helped her countless times. This was the least she could do. Standing with her back to him, she waited. Sang-yan slowly raised his hand toward her, but halfway there he stopped. His courage crumbled, and instead he covered his face with his palm, blushing as red as a tomato. Moments passed. Then, to his surprise, she suddenly turned around. Before he could react, she gently took his hand and placed it on her shoulder, supporting him with quiet determination. Startled, he let out a soft laugh. "What's so funny?" she asked, narrowing her eyes. He looked away, trying to stifle the smile. "Nothing," he muttered, but his expression said otherwise. Back in the present, the two dropped off Little Chung, and Yi Fan waved the intern goodbye, saying that they would see each other at the office the next day. Sang-yan asked about the boy, and Yi Fan explained that the fluffy-haired boy was a new intern at their company, and he seemed to know Sang-yan from university. Well, the man had absolutely nothing to say to that. And an awkward sort of silence settled over them as they rode around in the car. They made it home safely, parked the car, and made their way into the building. As they took an elevator, Yi Fan was starting to feel some intense kickback from indulging herself in drinks that night, and she was also feeling a lot of regret. Sang-yan was just turning back to tell her something when the lady just toppled and fell right on him, catching his loosened tie for support. His strong and manly arms caught her before she could hurt herself. They both were startled but strangely at peace in each other's embrace. The elevator slowly began to close, and the two stayed cuddled together inside of the tiny space. Sang-yan leaned in, his voice low and husky. "And what's the reason for holding me so close this time?" Yi Fan slowly lifted her gaze to meet his and muttered an apology. "I lost my balance." He straightened up, brow raised. "Really? You seemed perfectly fine just a moment ago." Then, as if a thought suddenly struck him, he tilted his head slightly and leaned in again. "Wait, don't tell me. You're trying to woo me?" Yi Fan blinked, confused by his unexpected accusation, but before she could respond, Sang-yan moved even closer, a mischievous glint in his eyes. "If you are," he whispered, "just be honest about it. If you're trying to seduce me, I'd appreciate a proper effort. Who knows? Maybe I'll even let you win my heart." His words brushed against her ear, sending a shiver down her spine, slightly from desire, and slightly at disbelief at his shamelessness. Yi Fan's face flushed, but she quickly composed herself. "I'm not trying anything for now, and when I do, I'll let you know." With that, she spun on her heel and hurried out of the elevator, leaving him standing there confused. Later in the kitchen, Sang-yan made her sit still for a moment so that she could regain her bearings while he prepared a hangover drink for her. The alcohol that she had taken was so strong that her poor stomach now felt very queasy. There was silence for a moment, but Sang-yan caught her trying to grab a glass with her shaky, unstable fingers. Anyway, he fetched her a glass of something warm to drink, and Yi Fan finally asked why her temporary roommate was dressed in a suit. She asked if he had found a job now that required a suit, and he sighed at her many questions. The handsome man was not interested in chatting with a drunkard right now. Yi Fan was quite offended since she had only had one glass, and told him that the real drunkard was the one who had dozens of glasses at their graduation ceremony. Sang-yan paused in his tracks and asked how she knew about that, and she revealed that Cheng had told her about it. Curious, she finally asked what had been on her mind. Why had he drunk so much that night? The question seemed to catch him off guard. For a moment, the tall man went quiet. Then, in a low voice, he replied, "It was a long time ago. I don't really remember anymore." Later that night, Sang-yan made a birthday call to a friend of his. Meanwhile, Yi Fan ate some porridge in the kitchen. The conversation on the phone went back and forth with someone as Sang-yan stated that he was younger than his friend. After the call, Yi Fan pointed out that he had been just 2 days younger than the person he was talking to, and he smirked, realizing about her remembering his details quite clearly. Later, trying to get some sleep, Yi Fan wonders why the alcohol was taking some time to get out of her system, and she continued to dream, wishing that her handsome roommate would stay a little longer. In the university, the girls chatted and giggled about a very handsome guy whom they had seen after collecting their certificates. This was back when Yi Fan was just graduating, and she hurried to take a picture with her friends. Suddenly, she heard someone calling out to her, and she had turned, spoiling the picture as the voice seemed familiar. But the boy quickly walked away without saying anything further. She looked carefully at the man who had looked so much like Sang-yan. In her memories, she chased after the tall and handsome figure, and her eyes snapped open as she woke up from the dream. It had Been ages ago then why she dreamed of that day today. Unable to sleep, she sat up and went on to find some water to drink. But when she opened her door and was surprised to find her roommate skulking around the halls at night, the man stared at her and wondered if she was sleepwalking again and asked, half teasing, "What's the reason this time?" When she didn't answer, he smirked and added, "What, not going to take advantage of me like last time?" Her eyes locked onto his face, and in that moment, she was struck by how much he resembled the boy from her memories. The one who had once called her names so gently, so earnestly. Sang-yeon looked almost exactly like him. Well, he figured she must be sleepwalking again, right? She gripped her hand. Without a second thought, her foot lifted, and she let herself be reckless. Just this once, she threw herself into his arms, wrapping him in a tight hug. The sudden gesture stunned him. This greatly surprised the dark-haired man, who stood there silent for a moment. Then, gradually, his body softened, and he relaxed into her embrace. He was just as warm as Yi Fan had imagined, and though he tried to hide it, a faint blush crept up his cheeks. This time he raised his hands to embrace her properly, but halfway through the hug, Yi Fan recalled telling the man to just punch her if she touched him again, so she quickly let go of him, making it a quiet, short hug and quickly returned to the room. The man was quite surprised by her really quick hug, but she had already returned to her room and shut the door behind her. In their separate rooms, color dusted their cheeks as they thought of each other. The girl squealed, wondering what she had just done, and the man also could not bring himself to sleep. So, the two stayed up all night, thinking about what had happened. Their night and dreams were filled with thoughts of each other. A few minutes later, Yi Fan began to experience great regret. She realized now that she definitely should not have hugged the man, and she wondered if she truly had been drunk earlier to do something like that. Yi Fan decided to make it a drunken mistake and then swore to quit alcohol. She also refused to take responsibility for her actions this time. Still, she could not sleep, and when she went searching for comfort online, she found none. The next day, Yi Fan was nervous with some slight insomnia, but Sang-yeon carried on as usual, like he was not bothered by anything. An awkward silence hung over them as they ate, so Yi Fan finally decided to bring up what had happened the other day. But Sang-yeon assured that she had sleepwalked last night, but fortunately, it had only resulted in a hug. This time she had exercised some restraint and did not exceed some limits, so he would let her off easy. She tried to apologize, but Sang-yeon was not having it. Her sleepwalking was indeed very unusual, and he asked Yi Fan if she had the habit of taking advantage of others, or if he was the only target. The man was now starting to have doubts about her sleepwalking. It did not help that the brunette had gone really quiet, so he mocked her, asking where all her excuses had gone now, or is it a new method of pursuing nowadays? Yi Fan finally worked up the courage to explain, but Sang-yeon did not need to hear it anymore. He was in a good mood today, so he offered to drive her to the office that day. As he was driving, he teased her that did she used all her energy taking his clothes off the other night. Yi Fan suddenly shouted at the accusation that it was not true. Sang-yeon, as if caught her, red-handed, looked sharply at her, making her silent, all of a sudden realizing her mistake. If she truly had sleepwalked, then she should not remember what she had done and what she had failed to do. Sang-yeon confidently asked how she was sure about that. She smartly reminded him that he had said that himself in the morning, that she had only hugged him last night. The man hummed, teasing that he must have remembered wrongly. Anyway, they eventually got to their destination, and Sang-yeon noticed Chang lurking around the corner. So, he leaned a little closer to her in the car and told her to stay still. The little Chang, of course, saw the couple in the car, and how Sang-yeon used the opportunity to get really close, like they were dating. Then, she asked what was in her hair, and he got embarrassed because there was nothing there. Anyway, he told her to hurry out of the car, and she had no idea what she had done wrong now. Later at work, Yi Fan greeted Cheng as usual, and the younger boy blatantly asked if she was dating Sang-yeon. She said that they were not a couple, and the intern sighed in relief. The boy had seen them come to work together, so he had been a bit worried. Later, Yi Fan's horrid friend apologized for giving her such a strong drink and worried if she was having a headache, but she explained that she had just gone home and fallen asleep. Then, the colleague reminded Yi Fan of the potential roommate that she had mentioned, and they had found a male university student. The woman had been complaining about the student's poor hygiene for ages, but now she was suddenly saying that she liked him the other day. Now she was only singing his praises. It seemed that sharing a home with the opposite sex would always lead to romance after all. Now this information got Yi Fan thinking, and then she said that it was not always the case. The colleague did not believe her friend and joked that Sang-yeon was definitely into her, but Yi Fan denied all allegations. In fact, she had started to feel like she was the one with ill intentions. The way that she had suddenly hugged him out of nowhere. She did not have the right to go after him when, in the past, she had been the one to push him away. She sighed with her head lowered, deciding that her friend was right. It must be because she had been meeting too frequently. Time bred strange and unwanted thoughts. It would be safer for her to just keep her distance from the handsome man. Work went on, and she ended up working rather late that day. Just then, she received a really long and thoughtful message from her mother, but reading it made her go quiet. Her mother told her not to skip meals and to take good care of herself. But it suffocates her now. Without replying at all, she coldly deleted her mother's messages, and she rested her head on the table to clear her mind. That evening, she returned home quite late and found Sang-yeon sitting and working, who scolded her for not informing him ahead of time that she would be coming home late. She apologized, of course, and the man asked why her attitude was now a little aloof. Was she trying to ignore or neglect him? She said that she was just tired and sleepy, that was all. The intelligent man immediately detected the subtle change in her usual mood, and he gently told her to get some rest. Silently, he watched as she retired to bed, and then he got up to freshen up and got busy about going to bed, just to find Yi Fan in her nightdress sitting in a hall. He fell silent and then sat on the chair as he stared at the silent lady, and then asked what was going on with her and why she was suddenly staring into space. Suddenly, she got up and kept drifting through the house, but this time her route changed to Sang Yan's room. He followed her and blocked her way with his firm body, asking what was going on with her. He helped guide her to her room so that she would not walk into a wall, and she moved carefully in the right direction. Now, he thought back to her behavior that night. She was fine, but he wondered what had changed her path this time and if she had avoided entering his room because the door was closed. Well, her sleepwalking behavior seemed rather random, and he wondered if she often stumbled around in any open space. He sat up, realizing that he could not sleep from all of this worrying. He stood and set about locking important doors. With everything safe and sound, the morning came, and Yi Fan woke up feeling just a little groggy. She quickly got washed and dressed, and then she popped out of the bedroom and got busy eating her breakfast. Sang Yan was not looking for her anyway, so she guessed that, fortunately, nothing had happened last night. She was about to be very surprised by that theory. Well, she was sure that she would not bump into him every time that she slept-walked. Then she got a message from Sixiao about Sang Yan working in Su Haowan's office. She unconsciously looked out for details, where Sang Yan was working, then suddenly got startled as she realized that she was looking up Sang Yan's company as if she was his girlfriend. Later, in mid-July, Sang Yan informed Yi Fan that his sister would be coming over for dinner that night. The man asked if that was fine with her. She replied fast, saying that the sister could come over anytime she wanted to. Later that night, Yi Fan came home to see Sang Yan cooking as usual, and there was a lady seated in their living room. She happily greeted Yi Fan, and she smiled, asking if their guest had something to eat as it was getting rather late. The lady pouted that her brother was so slow and had only just started cooking. Sang Yan ignored them both and focused on preparing the meal. While he was busy, Yi Fan offered some snacks for the girl to eat. The little girl's application results were also out, and she had finally made a decision to attend Yihei University, even if it was quite far. She did not want to stay put in Nawu either, and she wanted to explore a new city. Yi Fan also supported her decision to choose Yihei. However, the little girl pouted, saying that her brother was pretty angry about her choice. This was because she had not told him about her applications, and he had assumed that she would choose Nawu. The girl sulked that she had been called reckless and impudent, and to her brother it felt like she had secretly changed her application after applying for Nawu. Yi Fan looked blankly as it almost reminded her that she had done the same thing to him in the past, changing universities secretly without informing him. At the dinner table, his sister chatted endlessly while happily digging into her food. Meanwhile, Yi Fan sat quietly, her gaze fixed on Sang Yan. She couldn't stop thinking about the past. Was he upset with his sister for changing university to Yihei because of her? He had been genuinely happy when the exam results were announced, but his mood shifted completely the moment he found out she had changed universities. That day, she had really hurt him. Later, she sleepwalked yet again that night. She walked around in the hallways of her room and sat in the living room. After some time, Yi Fan stood up and, without fully realizing it, walked straight to Sang Yan's bedroom door. It wasn't locked, and without hesitation, she quietly let herself in. Sang Yan was fast asleep, his breathing calm and steady. She sat down gently beside him on the bed. Morning crept in, and the next thing she knew, they were both lying in the same bed. Yi Fan was the first to stir. As she blinked her eyes open, the first thing she saw was Sang Yan's face, peaceful, serene, and far too close. Her heart skipped. This is so inappropriate, she thought, carefully trying to slip out of bed without waking him. But just as she began to move, Sang Yan rolled over and lazily threw an arm around her, holding her in place. Her heartbeat quickened at the scandalous position she now found herself in. She waited, hoping he'd wake up and save her from the awkwardness. But he didn't move, still breathing evenly, deep in sleep. Gently, she lifted his arm and tried to sneak out from under him. She had just gotten to her feet when his voice broke the silence. Yi Fan? She froze. Slowly, she turned back to see him sitting up, groggy but very much awake. His eyes narrowed. What are you doing in my room? So close. She was so close to escaping. But now caught red-handed, she did the only thing she could think of. You're dreaming, she said quickly, keeping a straight face. Once you wake up, everything will go back to normal. He stared at her, clearly unimpressed. Do I look like an idiot to you? Without missing a beat, she pointed toward the bed. Just go back to sleep. Trust me, you'll forget all of this. And with that, she turned on her heel, practically sprinted out of the room, and slammed the door behind her. It had been such an embarrassing experience getting caught sharing a bed with Sang Yan, and she had no idea how she would face him now. She was so embarrassed that she quickly got dressed and hurried to leave the house because she needed to gather her thoughts to settle things with him. Unfortunately, things were not going as planned because her lingering gave him time to pop out of his room, and she tried to hurry faster so she would not have to answer all sorts of questions about her behavior. However, the handsome man grabbed her. She tried to protest, saying that she was late for an interview and that they could talk later that night, but Sang Yan wanted her to explain things now. Poor Yi Fan did not know how to explain why she had entered his room, and she apologized for her actions. Still, Her housemate admitted that she was starting to scare him, and he had no idea how far she would go, and perhaps he would wake up one day to find that she had robbed him of his chastity. She told him to be reasonable, and that she had just fallen asleep on his bed. She did not lay a finger on him, and he asked how she was so sure of that. Yi Fan had woken before him, and Sang Yan was a really rowdy sleeper who even yanked her back when she tried to leave. If anyone should be worried about getting their hastily stolen, it should be her. At any rate, they were even now, so it should not be a problem. The man teased her about her keeping scores, however. He was still the one at a disadvantage. After all, it had happened many times, and it was also clear who had feelings for another between the two of them. Well, Yi Fan could not even deny it, and she reminded him that she needed to rush to get to the interview. It was best that they settle the situation that night, and the man finally agreed that this was fine by him. On her way, Yi Fan thought back to all that had happened, still feeling a little guilty about it. It was not like they had messed around, nothing huge had happened. Still, her head hurt just trying to think of how to resolve the issue. Later, at the Nanwu television station, they would be interviewing the car accident's victim and her mother at the hospital. Cheng was to check the equipment once they got to the car. Then Cheng asked if the lady had any time after work. He wanted to get a gift for his senior's baby daughter, but Yi Fan just told him to ask her other colleague for help since she had a daughter. Clearly, Cheng was just fishing for the opportunity to go out with her. Then, he said there was a smudge of dirt on her face, and he reached out his grubby hands to help her clean it. Yi Fan immediately pulled back, visibly uncomfortable with any unfamiliar touch, and quietly said she'd handle it later. But strangely, she had never felt that way with Sang Yan. Cheng was disappointed, but his tenacity was world-class, and he refused to take defeat lying down. They got into the car, and he kept asking personal questions about her life. For instance, he wanted to know how she had met his senior Sang Yan. Well, they were high school classmates, and Cheng then asked if he knew about the girl that Sang Yan had liked throughout high school. The younger Sang Yan had wooed this beautiful girl for ages, but he had still failed. Cheng had heard about this from his senior, but not even his senior knew who she was. So naturally, the boy was curious. How had she managed to capture someone like Sang Yan's heart? Most people wanted to know. Yi Fan dismissed the idea, claiming she knew nothing about Sang Yan's crush, while silently questioning why Cheng was always so nosy. The intern kept talking about Sang Yan and then asked his senior if she thought that he could be that devoted and in love, just like Sang Yan had been about his high school crush. Yi Fan simply hummed in response, and her mind got filled with thoughts of Sang Yan's high school crush. Apparently, it had always been her, and deep down, she had always known. She was looking a little downcast, so Cheng stole the moment to keep fanning the flames, and added that Sang Yan also said that he might woo the girl again if he met her again. Later, the two got back to work, and the preparations were made for the interview. The mother spoke with eyes reddened from crying about how the driver had gotten into an accident and hit her child. They were lucky that the other man noticed and called the ambulance right away, but her poor child had only just enrolled at the Nanwu Arts Academy. Yi Fan asked if the little girl danced, and the mother admitted that the girl had been dancing ballet since she was 7. The girl was very introverted, and dancing helped her become more outgoing. Now the doctors could not tell if the young girl would be able to continue her dancing. They were now considering transferring the girl to a regular middle school. It was indeed a huge and crushing moment, and now Yi Fan looked at the poor girl in the hospital. It reminded her of the time when she had been stuck in the hospital because of a serious tear in her legs, and being bedridden for 3 months meant that she would not be able to join the summer dance. Yi Fan had still very much wanted to dance, and the kind mother suggested that Yi Fan could try studying as a liberal arts student. She, of course, did not want to give up dancing, but she found that her parents thought that the holiday training was too expensive. The stepfather was unemployed, and they needed the money that had been left behind by Yi Fan's father for Yi Fan to fund household expenses. They could pay for every training that she had during the breaks, but for now, it would be easier to get the girl to give up on her dancing dream. So, the next semester, the poor Yi Fan had to return to liberal arts, and the other students had muttered that this was difficult since they were so close to the entrance examinations. They all loudly gossiped about how she was done with dancing, while Sang Yan quietly watched from the back. Later, when Yi Fan was sitting alone, Sang Yan came over and approached her. He had asked why she had suddenly transferred back, so she explained that her leg was injured, and that she could not dance. The boy stared at her, surprised to hear this news. He asked more about her injury, but she could not go into detail, and she pretended like she was not so passionate about dancing anyway, so it was not a big deal. However, he poked her nose, seeing through her lies, and he teased that her nose would grow long if she carried on like that. The boy encouraged her, saying that it was fine and that they could wait a little longer. If her legs got better, then she could go back to being an art student as she so desperately wanted. Her results were a mess now, so for now, she should take the time to study and then dance for leisure if things worked out that way. He was just overflowing with encouragement, saying that if that did not suffice, he would learn how to dance for her. However, back in the present, the mother stayed faithful by her daughter's side, saying that the choice of transfer would always be her daughter's choice, and the parents would support her all the way. Yi Fan was surprised to hear but also happy, and reassured the mother that the girl would surely get better. Later that evening, Cheng invited Yi Fan to dinner with him, but Yi Fan wasn't feeling it. Plus she had so much work to do, so she had to pass. Yi Fan went right back to work, thinking of how every time she started to relax, an incident of this morning would come to her mind. She had no idea how to deal with this when she got back, and now that she had calmed down, things were very odd. Sang-yeon had every right to be mad to find her sleeping in his bed, and she had no idea how to fix the situation. So, she went to the internet and asked for advice on how to handle the situation, anonymously praying that she won't be caught by Sang-yeon. Suddenly a message popped up sent by Sang-yeon asking when she would come home. Well, she made an excuse of having a lot of work, and said that she might not come back. It was best for him to just lock the door. Sang-yeon stared at the phone in amusement, then he reminded Yi Fan that a person should always take responsibility for their own actions. And now Yi Fan felt like she was being so despicable and shameless. So, she decided to finish her work quickly, and then head back home. When Yi Fan returned home, she was briefly surprised to find Sang-yeon missing from the living room. But then she heard the sound of running water and realized he was just in the shower. Moments later, he emerged from the bathroom, water droplets clinging to his bare chest. Her eyes widened in shock. His entire upper body was on full display. Quickly, she turned her face away and snapped, "Didn't we agree to wear clothes in shared spaces?" Sang-yeon, entirely unfazed, casually got dressed while throwing a teasing grin her way. "If that's the rule, then aren't you the one making it hard for me to follow?" He plopped down beside her on the couch, noting her clearly flustered expression. "What's with that look?" he said, raising a brow. "We've already kissed and touched each other, haven't we? Does it really matter if I'm dressed or not around you now?" Yi Fan, eager to change the subject, pointed out. "Anyway, putting a chair in front of your door won't work every time. Just lock your door properly, okay?" But as she spoke, Sang-yeon kept his eyes locked on her face. Then suddenly, he reached out and gently cupped her cheeks. She stiffened instantly, her already pink cheeks turning a deeper shade of red. Flustered, she avoided his gaze. "Why are you blushing?" he asked with a half smile. "The weather's hot," she muttered under her breath. Sang-yeon leaned in a little closer. "But the air conditioner's on." Finally, she confessed in a flustered voice that she had never seen a man's bare body before, and that's exactly why she needed Sang-yeon to stop walking around half naked, as they had agreed. But Sang-yeon, clearly in a good mood, wasn't in the mood to follow rules. With a teasing grin, he leaned in slightly and said, "Well then, I'll make an exception today. You're free to take advantage of me, if you can." This shocked Yi Fan speechless, as she had never met anyone so shameless. Well, she would try her best to ensure that she did not end up in his bed a second time, so he should also work hard to take precautions and keep her out. Before Yi Fan could suggest a solution to fix everything, Sang-yeon made one request. He wanted her to keep her distance from other men. It was an oddly possessive request, and a little amusing, but he didn't stop there. With his usual shamelessness, he added, "You can ask anything from me. Just don't go around acting all sophisticated in front of other guys." Later that night, Yi Fan went to bed, thinking about how much she did not mind it when Sang-yeon touched her. The man was unlike other people, and that was not an ordinary request he had made either. He surely had been hinting at something else. Well, she checked her phone and she found many comments under her post. The first comment asked if her male friend had gotten excited at their close encounter in the morning. Her face turned crimson in an instant, and the bashful Yi Fan quickly rushed off, desperately trying to erase the image from her mind. The next comment then asked if her roommate had a crush on her, or if he had a girlfriend, or if he wanted to take advantage of her. There were so many suggestions, but Yi Fan did come to realize that the man treated her differently. Even if her actions were involuntary, the man was the type of person to move out if he hated it or found her behavior unacceptable. Perhaps she truly was a thorn in his side, and she started to have a lot of self-doubt. She wondered if the man still had feelings for her or if he thought that she was just a bother now. Back in high school, lots of girls had gossiped about Sang-yeon, calling him too arrogant and eagerly awaiting his downfall. Even back then, Yi Fan had not thought of him as arrogant, and she thought that it was fine for him to have his heart's desires. Even if he yearned for the stars, she thought that it was fine for Sang-yeon to pluck them from the sky itself, as long as he remained eternally radiant and bursting with life. It was finally the national holidays, and she went to meet Sichiao. She smiled and asked how Yi Fan and Sang-yeon were doing, and if they truly were not dating at all. Yi Fan admitted that they were just housemates. Besides, they were both very busy with work, and they hardly met up at the house at all. Well, Sichiao had heard that Sang-yeon's family had been trying to set the man up on blind dates, which was surprising news to Yi Fan. Sichiao had really hoped that something would really spark between them, but also knowing Sang-yeon's personality, it made sense. Yi Fan was quiet, probably thinking, was it really Sang-yeon's fault or hers? Sichiao mentioned how she met one guy, and even was thinking of trying to pursue him, but at the same time she was way too lazy to go after him. She explained to Yi Fan how flirting worked, and this time when Yi Fan was quite interested in this conversation. Well, Sichiao gave her friend a nice breakdown of how flirting usually worked. She also explained that if Yi Fan is really interested, she would try to go after him. If she did not try, then she would probably regret it later. It would be a huge loss if someone else captured Sang-yeon. This made Yi Fan reevaluate all the things properly. Later, she returned home to find Sang-yeon on a phone call with his mom. Yi Fan worried that the call was about all the blind dates, and she also can't imagine Sang-yeon chatting and having meals with another girl. He noticed that she had returned and asked if she was back from her date with her childhood sweetheart. She had not been out with Shang Lang, though, much to the man's surprise and relief. Then Yi Fan pointed out the kind of clothes he'd been wearing lately, casually revealing, just enough to be distracting. Sang-yeon paused, then looked up at her with a teasing glint in his eye. What's wrong? Afraid you won't be able to resist me? We're adults, you know. Shouldn't we have a little self-control when it comes to our desires? He was clearly joking, but this time Yi Fan didn't back down. With a serious expression and a hint of boldness, she replied, "If you keep acting and dressing like this, I might really lose control. And honestly, I'm scared I'll commit a crime this time." Sang Yan froze, stunned into silence. For once, the smooth-talking man was completely speechless. With that being said, she reminded him to be a bit more careful, and then she headed to bed. Sang Yan called for her to wait, and she sighed, asking what he wanted now. Well, the man smiled and asked what exactly she planned on doing to him, and began to tease by guessing what she would do with him, even saying that if she had the guts, then she should go ahead. She began to protest and huffed as she stomped away to her room. And Sang Yan was rather disappointed that she did not take the bait as he wanted her to. Yi Fan sighed in the safety of her room, realizing that her housemate had not shunned her flirting, and instead started flirting back at her. She could not really tell what his goal was, so she decided that she would have to probe even more. On October 24th, the second day of the frost's descent, Yi Fan worked some overtime till 11 at night. It was her birthday, and she turned 24 that day. It was late, and she did not really want to bother Sang Yan, so she tried to sneak away. However, he saw her, and he asked her to help him get the box from the fridge. The lady went over to the fridge and was surprised to see a pretty box with a bow in there. She blushed when she picked it up and wondered if it was meant for her. Well, she handed the box to Sang Yan, and then tried to act coy, saying that she was going to bed. But Sang Yan asked her to eat it with him. They sat together before the adorable birthday cake, and Yi Fan finally asked if it was for her, but Sang Yan replied nonchalantly that it was just an impulsive purchase. She anyway thanked him and admitted that she had not received a birthday cake in a long time. She took a few happy pictures of the adorable treat, and Sang Yan lit the candle and looked at her with a soft smile. "Make a wish," he said. Yi Fan closed her eyes, made her silent wish for her 24th birthday, and gently blew out the candle. "What did you wish for?" Sang Yan asked, his voice curious. Naturally, Yi Fan couldn't reveal it, not if she wanted it to come true. "If I tell you," she said lightly, "it won't come true." But Sang Yan wasn't one to let things slide. He tilted his head, smirking. "How am I supposed to grant your wish if you don't tell me?" Her cheeks flushed at his boldness. She quickly looked away. "It's about work," she replied, avoiding his gaze. He chuckled. "Really? I thought you were wishing for me to become your boyfriend." His tone was playful, but his meaning was clear. He wasn't hiding his feelings anymore. Yi Fan didn't respond. She just quietly passed him a slice of cake, trying to play it cool. Later, as they cleaned up, she carefully placed the leftover cake in the fridge. It was too late to finish the whole thing, and the quiet between them had grown warm and lingering. Just then, Sang Yan called her name. She turned to find him standing in front of her, his gaze flicking toward the clock. It was nearly midnight. "Check under the sofa," he said. "Your birthday present's there." Then he suddenly leaned in, causing her to flinch slightly, caught off guard. But instead of doing anything bold, he simply ruffled her hair with a soft grin. "Happy birthday," he said quietly. Then, without another word, he turned and walked to his room, closing the door behind him with a soft click and a bright smile on his face. Su Haoan called him at that moment, and talked about how he can introduce Sang Yan to lots of pretty girls. However, Sang Yan did not care about that, and he told him not to involve him in his nonsense. Su Haoan offered his help to Sang Yan with whatever he was up to these days, and with a smug smile, Sang Yan said, "There's a girl chasing after me, you know. I'm kind of busy being pursued. No time for anyone else." Meanwhile, Yi Fan had just found her present, and it was wrapped in such a pretty blue bag. The cake had already been unexpected, so she had not thought that she would get a gift as well. She carried the parcel to her room with love, and found a beautiful present inside with her nickname, First Frost, engraved on the bottle. She recalled the day back in high school when she'd casually shared her nickname with a few friends. Sang Yan had been sitting at the back of the classroom, quietly overhearing the conversation between the girls. Later that day, to her surprise, he had approached her and greeted her using that very nickname. From then on, he'd often used it, like a little inside joke just between the two of them. But after they met again all these years later, he had never said it again. Not even once. Yi Fan had genuinely assumed he'd forgotten. Yet now, there it was, engraved delicately on the bottle of the perfume he had gifted her, a name only he used, a memory only they shared. She gently placed the perfume back into its box, and let herself fall back onto the bed, lying on her back with a soft smile playing on her lips. The thought of him ruffling her hair earlier made her blush all over again. He had been so close. Her heart had raced uncontrollably. With her cheeks still warm, she covered her face shyly. Earlier that evening, she had wished for the courage to be brave this year, to go after the person she loved without hesitation. And if that person was Sang Yan, then she was willing to work hard, take the first step, and face her feelings head-on. With that thought, she made a quiet but firm resolution. This time, she would pursue Sang Yan openly, with no more hesitation, no more holding back. Back in high school, he had been the one chasing after her. Now, it was her turn. Firm in her decision, Yi Fan picked up her phone and typed out a message to Sang Yan. She wanted to thank him for the gift, and also ask when his birthday was, so she could return the favor. But truthfully, it was also her excuse to keep talking to him, even if he decided to move out someday. When Sang Yan read her message, he looked slightly amused before replying, "There are still 69 days until my birthday." Yi Fan smiled and quickly sent back, "Then, Can you help remind me every day until then? I'm afraid I might forget. Sang-yeon stared at her message for a second, his expression somewhere between disbelief and mild exasperation. Can't she just be a little more sincere with her feelings? He muttered to himself. Still, he agreed. On the other hand, although Yi Fan had resolved to pursue Sang-yeon, she wasn't exactly sure how to go about it. The next morning, she stood in front of her dressing mirror, hair neatly tied in a ponytail, ready for work like always. But something made her pause. After a moment's thought, she sat back down and started applying some light makeup, something she didn't normally bother with. Well, she murmured to her reflection, I do have someone to impress now. She even pulled out the bottle of perfume Sang-yeon had gifted her and gave herself a gentle spritz, smiling as the familiar scent lifted her mood. Out in the kitchen, Sang-yeon was already preparing breakfast, as usual. He heard some movement behind him and turned around, only to freeze for a split second when he saw Yi Fan walking out of her room. Something about her looked different today, more polished, more intentional, and then it hit him. She had put on the perfume he'd given her. His cheeks flushed slightly, but he quickly turned away and said casually, Grab a bowl, breakfast's ready. They sat down to a quiet meal, and after finishing, Sang-yeon stood up. Clean the table when you're done, he said, and hurried out of the kitchen. Yi Fan blinked. Is he still sleepy? She wondered, watching him go. But a moment later, he reappeared, fresh and dressed, clearly ready to head out. She looked at him, puzzled. You're going out? Sang-yeon nodded coolly, meeting a friend. As both prepared to leave, Yi Fan reached for a cap on the stand and pulled it on. But something felt off. It was too loose. She glanced toward Sang-yeon and caught him looking at her, or rather, at the cap. She touched the brim, then quickly realized, wait, this isn't mine. Her own cap was still hanging on the hook. She was wearing his. Without thinking too much, she stood on tiptoe, gently took off the cap, and reached out to fix it on his head, softly cupping his face as she did. The sudden closeness startled him. Yi Fan smiled to herself. This was her small, bold move. After adjusting the cap on him, she reached up again to smooth out his messy fringe, tucking it neatly back. There, she said lightly. You're welcome. Sang-yeon chuckled. If that's the case, I should thank you properly. With that, he reached for another cap, the correct one, and placed it on Yi Fan's head, mirroring her earlier gesture. Then he leaned in, his voice dropping a little. Your hair was a bit messy too, he said as he gently combed her hair back with his fingers, tucking the strands behind her ears. Yi Fan blinked at him, heart fluttering. Then Sang-yeon straightened and looked at her, pretending to be serious. Aren't you forgetting something? Yi Fan was confused for a moment, then quickly realized what he meant. She lowered her head, cheeks slightly pink. Right, thank you, she said quietly. Sang-yeon smirked and shrugged. Want a ride to the office? He offered coolly. Later at the office, Yi Fan arrived at her desk and immediately noticed something unusual, a slice of cake and a juice box placed neatly on her workspace. She looked around and asked her colleague, Do you know who left this here? Her colleague nodded casually. Oh, that intern boy. He brought it for you. Yi Fan blinked. He did? Her colleague leaned in with a knowing look. He's pretty obvious about his intentions, don't you think? Why not give him a chance? He's obedient and honestly not bad-looking either. Yi Fan fell quiet, her expression thoughtful as she glanced across the room toward the intern's desk. After a brief pause, she picked up the cake and juice box and calmly walked over to him. The intern looked up with a bright smile. Good morning, Yi Fan. Yi Fan returned the greeting politely. Good morning. But then, without much hesitation, she placed the items he had brought back down on his desk. His smile vanished. His eyes widened in disbelief. Yi Fan's tone remained calm but clear. I already had breakfast, so I don't need this, and please don't do things like this for me again. She gave him a small nod. Thank you, though, she added before turning and walking away, leaving behind a very stunned, very heartbroken intern. Back at her desk, her colleague, who had been watching the whole exchange, leaned over. What did you say to him? He looks like he just got dumped. Yi Fan sighed lightly. I was just drawing a clear line, that's all. Her colleague gave a small sigh of sympathy. Poor guy. Broken-hearted before even getting started. Then, after a moment of studying Yi Fan's face, she tilted her head. Wait. Something's different about you today. Are you dating someone? Yi Fan looked startled. What? No, I'm not dating. Yet. But. She blushed a little. I do have someone I like. I'm trying to pursue him. Her colleague chuckled. Girl, men are visual creatures. Just wave at them. They'll come crawling to your feet. Why put in so much effort? But Yi Fan shook her head with a playful but determined expression. I'm pursuing a handsome man. That got her colleague's attention. How handsome are we talking? Yi Fan didn't miss a beat. Handsome enough to be a top host at a club. Her colleague's jaw dropped slightly. Damn. Who is this guy? That evening, Yi Fan sat alone at the dinner table with a cup of instant noodles, scrolling through her phone. There was a message from Sang-yeon saying he'd be home late. She took a bite and thought about the morning. He did seem a little interested, right? She wondered. I mean, the way he acted. But then doubt crept in. What if he's only doing that to get back at me for how I treated him before? She sighed, unsure. As much as she wanted to tell him how she felt, she wasn't ready to confess directly. Not yet. Instead, she ended up making an anonymous post online, asking for advice on how to win over a guy she'd offended in the past. Unable to sleep, her mind drifted again. Is Sang-yeon back yet? What's he doing right now? And just then, her phone buzzed. A voice message. It was Sang Yan. 68 days left, he said, casually reminding her of his birthday, just like she had asked. Yi Fan blinked, a little surprised. He's really reminding me? There was a text from him too. If I don't remind you, I'll be the one losing out. You promised me a few meals, remember? Still haven't seen any of those. Yi Fan smiled softly and messaged back. This time, I promise for real. You won't lose out. Comforted by the exchange, she drifted off to sleep. The next morning, as wake up and suddenly remembered, she hadn't checked his full reply. She pulled out her phone and played the voice message again. Sang Yan's voice was a little sarcastic, but held something else too. What more could I even lose? Haven't you already done everything to me? Yi Fan stared at the screen. He's not wrong, she muttered. After all, she had kissed him, hugged him, though she didn't fully remember it. But just because I don't remember doesn't mean it didn't happen, right? Then came the lingering thought, if we ever get back together, would those things still mean something to him, or would they feel boring now? Later at the office, Yi Fan's colleague asked with a curious grin. So? Any progress on your pursuit? Yi Fan gave a sheepish smile. Still working on it. There is not much progress yet. Her colleague's eyes widened. Seriously? It's already been a month. What is this man doing? How has he not noticed all your efforts? Yi Fan gave a light sigh. Maybe because he doesn't even know I'm trying to woo him. Then, after a pause, she asked quietly, should I just tell him? But her colleague quickly shook her head, waving her hand in warning. Absolutely not. Don't make yourself vulnerable that easily. Keep some mystery. She even advised, whispering like it was a trade secret. Instead, try chatting with him more. Learn about his hobbies. That's a good start. Yi Fan nodded thoughtfully. Hobbies, huh? Then something clicked. She remembered, Sang Yan had been playing a video game lately. With newfound determination, she decided to dive into his world. That night, she downloaded the game and began reading through its guidelines, tutorials, and tips. But somewhere along the way, Yi Fan got a bit carried away. What started as a strategy to bond with him turned into a full-on obsession. She was so determined to level up that she completely forgot the original goal, talking to Sang Yan. Every evening, she'd eat dinner in record time just to rush back and train in the game. I need to catch up to his level. I can't look like a total noob. But even after 3 days of grinding, her progress was painfully slow. One evening, while she was glued to her phone trying to defeat another enemy in the game, Sang Yan entered the room. Dinner? He asked casually. Startled, Yi Fan panicked. She quickly locked her phone and stuffed it under a pillow, not wanting him to see her embarrassingly low score. I'll join you in a bit, she stammered. Sang Yan paused, eyes flickering toward her oddly suspicious movements. But instead of saying anything, he just looked at her quietly, almost like he understood everything, but chose to pretend he didn't. At overtime, Sang Yan's friends had already gathered, chatting over drinks. Not long after, the man himself walked in, dressed in a sleek black suit and tie, looking effortlessly dashing as always. Su Haowen spotted him first and couldn't help teasing. Look who finally found time to meet his friends. Sang Yan, completely unbothered, shot him a look as he loosened his tie and sat down. Shut up and stop whining. Their other friend slung an arm around Sang Yan's shoulder with a grin. Seriously though, what have you been up to lately? But Sang Yan replied flatly, not telling. If I do, you'll all be so jealous it'll ruin the night. His arrogance left them quiet for a moment, rolling their eyes at each other. Then Su Haowen spoke again, glancing at the others. He told me earlier he's being pursued by a girl. That's why he's been too busy to hang out. The third friend raised an eyebrow. A girl? I mean, that's not new. Plenty of girls have chased after him before. Then he paused, catching the real surprise. Wait, you're interested this time? Sang Yan took a lazy sip of his drink. So what if I am? That shut them up for a second. His confirmation wasn't loud, but it was clear, and completely unexpected. Curiosity lit up their faces. Who is she? Yeah, and if you like her too, why are you just letting her do all the work? The friend frowned slightly. Don't be a jerk about this. What are you planning to do with her? Sang Yan's lips curled into a knowing smirk. She's trying to hit on me, and honestly... He shrugged. What else can I do? I can only wait for her move, right? Later that night, Sang Yan returned home. The apartment was quiet, too quiet. He figured Yi Fan must already be asleep. He walked quietly toward his room, but as he opened the door, his eyes widened in surprise. Yi Fan was lying in his bed, peacefully asleep. He crouched down beside her, watching her serene face under the soft light. His voice dropped to a whisper. Aren't you a bit of a bully? He murmured. Claiming both rooms as yours now? She didn't stir. Completely unaware of his presence, she just continued sleeping, her breathing calm and soft. Sang Yan studied her quietly, his tone softer now. Can't you be a little more blatant with your attempts, so I can be more certain? He thought back. Back then, even though he had sensed she was fond of him, he knew she hadn't been ready. Not for the kind of relationship he wanted, not for everything he was prepared to give. But now he would wait. He would wait until she was willing to reach out to him. And only then would he offer everything to her once more. When Wen Yi Fan woke up, she blinked a few times, realizing she wasn't in her own room. She was in Sang Yan's room again. She let out a long sigh. Did I sleepwalk into his room again? But if she was here, did that mean he was sleeping outside? She got up and stepped out quietly, and as she walked into the living room, her suspicions were confirmed. Sang Yan was sitting on the sofa, blanket tangled around him, clearly having spent the night there. Hearing the noise, he stirred and sat up groggily. Yi Fan frowned. Did you sleep here all night? He yawned, rubbing his eyes. Yeah. Guilt crept up her spine. Because of her. He had to deal with this. She walked over and sat beside him. From now on, lock your door, okay? That way I won't accidentally wander in again. But Sang-yeon gave her a lazy smirk. What if you crack the lock? She gasped. I won't. I'd never do that. He leaned in slightly, teasing. Oh, come on, you'll do anything to take advantage of me. Although he was clearly joking, Yi Fan froze. Her eyes widened. Wait, did I do something again last night? She looked genuinely panicked. And if I did, why don't you lock your door? What are you waiting for? For things to go too far? She straightened up, looking serious now. If I actually did something to you, then would you finally lock the door? Sang-yeon blinked, startled. He hadn't expected her to take the joke seriously. Before he could respond, Yi Fan suddenly stood and leaned in toward him. Close. Really close. For a second, neither of them moved. Yi Fan was waiting, hoping he'd flinch or back away. But Sang-yeon didn't move an inch. He stayed there, eyes curious, wondering, what's she going to do next? But in the end, Yi Fan didn't go through with anything. She sat back down beside him, cheeks flushed. I'm serious, she reminded him again. If you don't lock your door, anything could happen. Sang-yeon smirked, clearly enjoying this. Oh? Like what exactly? Why don't you explain in more detail? Flustered, Yi Fan stood up quickly. I'm late for work, she announced and turned to leave, desperate to escape the rising tension. But just then, Sang-yeon, seeing her distress, decided to let her off the hook. Nothing happened last night, by the way, he called after her, voice calm. He shifted on the sofa, and as he did, his blanket slid off the edge onto the floor. Yi Fan, halfway to her room, noticed it and bent down to pick it up. Here, she said, reaching out. But as she lifted the blanket, Sang-yeon tugged it toward him at the same time, pulling her off balance. In a blink, she toppled forward and landed right on him. Sang-yeon instinctively caught her, wrapping his arms gently around her as she landed in his embrace. Yi Fan's cheeks flamed from the sudden closeness. Her heart was racing. He looked straight into her eyes, voice low and teasing. So, do you finally have the guts to make a move now? Yi Fan hesitated, trying to muster the courage. But eventually she leaned back slightly, smile shy. Not yet. She started to get up and turned to leave. But just before walking away, she left a soft hint to maybe next time. And just like that, she was gone. Sang-yeon, left sitting on the sofa, blinked slowly. He was the one who was supposed to tease her, but now he was the one blushing. She was finally getting serious. Meanwhile, Yi Fan had rushed into her room, heart pounding. I held back. Barely, she whispered. If she hadn't stopped herself, she might have crossed a line, without even having a proper relationship yet. But now a new worry crept in. Will I ever get the chance to do that again? In early December, Yi Fan walked into the living room, where Sang-yeon was sitting on the couch, eyes glued to his phone. She hesitated for a moment, then quietly sat down beside him. She was here for a reason, to invite him to dinner, but wasn't sure if he'd be free on Friday night. Sensing her presence, Sang-yeon glanced over and asked casually, Is there something you want to say? Yi Fan took a breath and finally asked, Are you free this Friday night to have a meal with me? Sang-yeon smirked. So you're finally treating me to that Miss Meal? He nodded, clearly pleased. Sure, I'm free. Yi Fan quickly added, If you're working late, I can wait at the restaurant directly. But Sang-yeon shook his head. No need. I'll come home first, and then we can leave together. She nodded, satisfied, and stood up to leave. And just like that, their first date was officially set. Sang-yeon leaned back, a small smile tugging at his lips. Finally. It's happening, he thought, his mood instantly lifted. The day finally arrived. Yi Fan sat in front of her mirror, carefully getting ready for their dinner. She applied a touch of makeup and smiled at her reflection before reaching for the perfume Sang-yeon had gifted her on her birthday. One spritz and the familiar scent instantly brought him to mind. Meanwhile, Sang-yeon had just returned from the office. He was taking off his shoes when Yi Fan stepped into view. She was dressed up for the evening, simple, elegant, and radiant. For a moment, Sang-yeon just stood there, stunned. His gaze lingered on her longer than he intended. Yi Fan noticed and asked with a soft smile, Are you ready to go? That snapped him out of it. Wait. I need to grab something from my room first, he said quickly before turning and walking off. He entered his room, and the door shut with a click behind him, locked. Inside, he leaned back against the door, exhaling hard. His face was flushed, and beads of sweat formed on his forehead. The truth? There was nothing he needed to grab. He just needed a moment. Something inside him had stirred when he saw her like that, and he needed to calm himself down before they left. After a few deep breaths, he straightened his posture, adjusted his collar, and stepped back out, completely composed. All right, he said coolly. Let's go. When they reached the restaurant, Sang-yeon approached the front desk and politely asked, Table for two, please. Just as the hostess was about to respond, a voice called out from behind. Senior Sang-yeon? It was a girl, bright-eyed, clearly surprised to see him. She seemed to be one of his juniors from the office. But when Yi Fan turned to look at the girl, her expression instantly shifted to shock. The girl, too, looked equally stunned. They hadn't expected to run into each other here. As it turned out, Sang-yeon's team dinner was also being held at the same restaurant that evening. A few of his teammates and even his manager were already there and came over to greet him, inviting him to join their table since he was already at the restaurant. Not wanting to create an awkward situation or decline his manager, Sang-yeon turned slightly to Yi Fan and asked, Is it okay if we join them? Yi Fan nodded politely. It's fine. I don't want to be rude either. So the two joined the group and took their seats. The manager, noticing the girl still glancing at Yi Fan, asked curiously, "You two know each other?" The girl nodded and said, "She's my sister, my older sister." Sang Yan, who'd been sipping his tea, nearly choked. "Wait, she's your sister?" He turned to Yi Fan. Yi Fan, busy wiping her bowl, looked slightly uncomfortable. "She's my stepsister," she replied quietly. Seeing everyone's curiosity build, Yi Fan offered a brief explanation. "Our parents remarried, that's all." The topic quickly shifted when the manager asked with a teasing tone, "So, is she your girlfriend, Sang Yan?" Sang Yan was caught off guard, about to speak, but Yi Fan beat him to it. "We're just friends." Soon after, dinner was served. Among the dishes, there was a bottle of a drink that no one had ordered. It seemed like a mistake from the kitchen, and no one at the table was interested in drinking it. Unexpectedly, Yi Fan's sister piped up, "Why don't we give it to my sister? She's not picky, she'll drink it." Sang Yan's eyes narrowed slightly, watching the scene unfold. Then, the girl turned to him with a sweet smile. "Senior Sang Yan, would you like to choose something from the drink menu?" she asked, offering the menu. But his gaze turned cold, so cold that she flinched slightly at the change. Without saying a word to her, he took the menu and turned to Yi Fan instead. "Here," he said, offering it to her. "Pick anything you like." Then, without breaking eye contact, he picked up the drink her sister had tried to pass off and silently set it aside. Yi Fan's heart warmed. At least here, in this moment, she had someone who was on her side. But she noticed her stepsister's face now looked stiff and uneasy, clearly embarrassed by the way Sang Yan had just brushed her off. Then, from the side, Sang Yan leaned closer to Yi Fan and whispered, "By the way, this dinner doesn't count. You still owe me a real one." He wasn't about to accept this group dinner as their first date. After dinner, in the washroom area, Yi Fan's stepsister approached her. "You know Senior Sang Yan?" she asked casually. Yi Fan, clearly not in the mood for small talk, simply hummed in response. The girl continued. "My manager told me to apologize to your friend in case I came off as rude. But I wasn't rude, right? I just thought you weren't picky, so it made sense to offer it to you. I didn't want the drink to go to waste." Yi Fan, who had no energy for justifications, looked her straight in the eye. "If that was the case, then why didn't you drink it?" The girl paused, surprised. Yi Fan rarely ever talked back like that. She hesitated and finally replied, "I didn't like it either." Then quickly added, "Please just explain it to the manager. I'm still on probation. I don't want any problems." Yi Fan simply replied, "You're overthinking it. It won't come to that." Then her stepsister added more casually, "By the way, is Senior Sang Yan wooing you? He seems really interested in you." Yi Fan blinked, caught off guard. "Does it really seem that way?" Her stepsister let out a short laugh. "Isn't it obvious? The way he's treating you, he doesn't treat anyone else like that." A moment later, she pulled out her phone. "Give me your number, okay? Also, why haven't you been contacting Mom? She's been feeling down lately." Yi Fan, expression tightening, refused. "No need." She turned, ready to leave. Her stepsister frowned, voice tinged with irritation. "Why are you acting like this? I'm trying to help. Even though I'm the stepdaughter, I treat your mom better than you do." Yi Fan let out a small smile, bittersweet and tired. "You're right. You really are more of a daughter to her than I ever was." Her mother didn't lose a daughter when she got remarried, but she did. She lost her mother, and with that, she walked out of the washroom first, her steps light but steady. Her sister followed a moment later. Back at the table, one of the colleagues suggested, "Let's take a selfie for the team post." Yi Fan, sitting beside Sang Yan, leaned over and whispered, "Should I stay out of the photo? I'm not part of your team." But Sang Yan turned to her with a smile. "Why should you?" he said. "You're here with me. That means you should stay beside me, to compliment me, of course." And with that, they posed for the picture. That photo, their ruined first date, was captured forever. Soon after they left the restaurant, Sang Yan turned to Yi Fan and suggested casually, "Want to watch a movie?" Before she could respond, he handed her his phone. "You pick." As Yi Fan scrolled through the listings, Sang Yan glanced at her and asked in a low voice, "Are you not on good terms with your sister?" Yi Fan paused for a moment, eyes still on the phone screen. "It's not exactly bad terms," she replied vaguely. "It's just, ever since our parents remarried, we never really connected much." She went quiet after that. Not wanting the mood to grow heavy, she quickly shifted the topic. "So, what kind of movie do you prefer? Disaster or horror?" Sang Yan understood immediately. She wasn't ready to talk about family matters, so he played along, keeping things light. "Disaster," he answered with a small smile. Yi Fan nodded, seemingly relieved, and booked the tickets on the spot. But when they reached the theater, Sang Yan stared at the screen in confusion. "Wait, this isn't a disaster movie. It's a horror film." Yi Fan looked down at her phone, eyes widening. "What? Really?" she muttered, flustered. In her rush to book and still distracted by their earlier conversation, she'd accidentally selected the wrong movie. Her eyes darted to him in concern. She knew very well, Sang Yan didn't like horror movies. More accurately, he was scared of them. Trying to reassure him, she smiled and said sweetly, "Don't worry. If you get scared, I'm right here. I'll protect you." Sang Yan laughed, loudly. "You'll protect me?" His amusement was obvious, and of course, he flat out denied being scared. No way was he going to admit that. His male ego wouldn't allow it. As the movie started, Yi Fan was completely focused, eyes glued to the screen. But Sang-yeon wasn't going to let her off that easily. He leaned a little closer and whispered dramatically, "I think I'm scared." Yi Fan shot him a side-eye. Seriously? He made a face like he was genuinely terrified, but she could tell he was being sarcastic. Then he leaned in again, smirking. "Weren't you going to protect me? Or were you planning to take advantage of me?" Yi Fan stifled a laugh, completely distracted now. She couldn't focus on the movie at all thanks to his constant teasing. But as she watched him, his playful expression, the way he kept looking at her, the soft teasing tone in his voice, and remembering her stepsister's words earlier, finally hit her. Even after all these years, Sang-yeon was still fond of her. More than fond, actually. It was written all over his face. 2 weeks later, Yi Fan received a call from the station. There had been a tunnel collapse in Bayu City, and she needed to head there immediately to cover the incident. She hurriedly packed her things and rushed toward the door. Just as she was about to leave, Sang-yeon stopped her. "When will you be back?" he asked. Yi Fan paused by the door, turning back briefly. 2 weeks, she replied, then hesitated for a second. "But your birthday will fall within that time. I might not be back in time." Sang-yeon only smiled gently. "Then have a safe trip," he said, stepping aside to let her pass. She walked out toward the door, but before she could get too far, she heard him call out to her again. "Yi Fan, come back quickly, okay? I have something to tell you." Surprised, she turned to face him. "Why can't you just tell me now?" she asked, confused. He smiled again, this time softer. "If I tell you now, you'll be thinking about it the entire time you're working. I don't want to distract you." She stared at him for a moment longer, then nodded and left. But the truth was, she was already distracted. As the car sped toward Bayu, Yi Fan found herself staring at her phone, her thoughts a tangled mess of one person. What could Sang-yeon possibly want to tell me? He told her to focus on work, yet now, that's all she could think about, him. Her phone buzzed, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from her stepsister, a friend request, along with several attached photos from the company dinner that night. Though she had said she wouldn't keep in contact, Yi Fan still accepted the request and opened the pictures. They were all casual shots from the dinner. But something caught her eye. In every single photo, Sang-yeon's gaze was the same. He was always looking at her. In Bayu, the situation was serious. The tunnel collapse had caused major damage, many were injured, and sadly, some had lost their lives. Yi Fan threw herself into the work, even heading deep into the site herself to get a clearer understanding. When she returned, the team quickly divided up tasks. Just as she was about to move on, Chung noticed a small scratch on the side of her neck, something she'd picked up while inside the tunnel. "Does it hurt?" Chung asked. Yi Fan shook her head. "I've got some ointment. I'll take care of it." That night, they worked until almost midnight. Exhausted, Yi Fan finally pulled out her phone, and there it was again, a message from Sang-yeon. 12 days left, his voice said. His birthday countdown had become a daily ritual. And lately, instead of texts, he'd started sending voice messages. Even during her chaotic workdays, he was a constant. The rescue operation continued for 4 more days. Yi Fan was constantly on the move, interviewing victims, experts, officials, anyone connected to the tragedy. And at night, she stayed up writing reports. But no matter how busy the day was, Sang-yeon's voice messages never failed to arrive. And that night, Christmas Eve, his message had a different tone. "When you get back, I want an apple. That'll be my Christmas gift." Yi Fan laughed softly and quickly sent him back an emoji of an apple. "Here's the apple emoji for now. I promise I'll bring you a real one when I'm back." She hesitated, then added, "Though, I'm not sure I'll make it back before New Year's Eve." Sang-yeon read her reply and smiled. Then he sent another voice message. "Remember to lock your door when you sleep. That way, even if you sleepwalk, you'll stay in your room." There was a slight pause before he added softly, "Because only I'm allowed to see that side of you." Yi Fan couldn't help smiling as she listened. She typed back simply, "Okay, I'll lock it. Promise." Days later, the interviews were finally coming to an end. But despite her best intentions, Yi Fan still couldn't make it back in time for Sang-yeon's birthday. On the midnight of January 2nd, she sat down and typed him a birthday message. "Happy birthday, Sang-yeon." Along with the message, she ordered a cake to be delivered to their home and sent him a note to collect it. Sang-yeon replied nonchalantly, "Thanks for the thoughtfulness. At least all my hard work reminding you wasn't in vain." She followed up with another message. "I won't be able to come back today. I have to submit my final report. I'll return tomorrow." Soon after, he sent her a voice message. "All right then, just consider my birthday tomorrow this year." The next day, their assignment officially wrapped up. Yi Fan asked Chung to head back first while she took a little detour to a place she hadn't visited in years. Without fully realizing it, her feet led her to a familiar spot near her old high school. She wandered through the streets and, before she knew it, found herself standing in front of a small shop. The shop. The one she used to visit with Sang-yeon during high school, whenever he came to see her in Bayu. The owner recognized her immediately. "It's been a while," he said with a warm smile. They chatted briefly, and without asking, he placed the same order she and Sang-yeon always used to get. While waiting for the food, Yi Fan stood near the entrance, her gaze scanning the street outside. Her mind drifted back to the last time she came here with him. It had been raining that day. The day they parted ways. The day she told him not to follow her anymore. "Don't bother with me again." And he had only replied, "All right then, I won't bother you anymore." But in truth, he was never a bother. Never. For so many years, she had lived in her protective shell. careful not to grow emotionally attached, always mindful of where to draw the line so she could retreat before getting hurt. But now she didn't want to retreat anymore. This time, she wanted to take the first step. She pulled out her phone and, without overthinking, made a call. Sang-yeon was on a train when the call came in. The moment he saw her name flash on the screen, he picked up instantly. Hello? Yi Fan didn't waste time. Her voice was steady, but her heart was racing. Does it still count? She asked. He blinked. What? He was confused. She cleared her throat, pushing through her nerves. You said before, if I chased after you, you'd consider it. Her voice dropped slightly, almost hesitant. So I'm asking, is that offer still open? There was silence on the line. Yi Fan felt her courage start to wobble. She quickly added, never mind. I just wanted to tell you what I was thinking. You can take your time to think about it. And with that, she hung up the call. Blushing furiously, she picked up her chopsticks and sipped her noodle soup, trying to calm the flurry of emotions inside her chest. The noodles were long gone, but the phone stayed silent. He still hadn't called back. Her heart started sinking. Was that a no? After all, if it were a yes, wouldn't he have called back right away? The rain was falling harder now. Yi Fan finally stood up, deciding it was time to head back to her hotel. But as she pushed open the door to leave the shop, she froze. Standing right there, just outside in the rain, was Sang-yeon. Her eyes widened in disbelief. He was here, face to face. The shop owner looked up and greeted him with a familiar smile. Want to order something? But Sang-yeon simply shook his head. No, I'm here to pick someone up. A second later, recognition dawned on the owner's face. Yi Fan, still trying to catch her breath from the shock, stepped forward. What are you doing here? She asked. Sang-yeon looked at her calmly. I was already on my way here when you called. She blinked. Wait, how did you know I was at this shop? He shrugged slightly. Whenever I come to this city, this is always the first place I visit. Without needing to say more, they both stepped out into the rain and began walking side by side. The rain continued to pour as they made their way toward the hotel. But after a few minutes, Sang-yeon suddenly came to a stop. He exhaled deeply and looked away for a second before looking at her again. I always thought saying stuff like this was way too cheesy. Just thinking about saying it out loud makes me cringe. He paused, but I figured I should probably say it at least once in my lifetime. Then, to her complete surprise, he lowered his head slightly and said softly, but firmly, Yi Fan, haven't you noticed? Even after all these years, I still love you. His voice cracked just slightly at the end, as if letting go of something he'd held in for far too long. For me, you were the one. You'll always be the only one. The confession, simple, heartfelt, and raw, hung in the air between them. Yi Fan stood there, stunned. Her lips parted, but no words came out at first. Sang-yeon raised an eyebrow. You're not going to say anything? Finally, she blinked back the emotion and smiled shyly. If saying things like that makes you cringe. She paused, then added softly, then I'll be the one to say them from now on. Though clearly flustered, she took a deep breath and looked him in the eye. Sang-yeon, I love you too. It was awkward, yes, but sincere. Her courage, her trembling voice, her gaze, everything he needed to hear, at last. And with that mutual, long-awaited confession, their relationship, after all these years, was finally official. As Yi Fan looked at the man in front of her, it still felt unreal. Was this actually happening? Or was it just some rain-soaked delusion messing with her head? Lost in thought, she didn't notice Sang-yeon leaning in. Are you that happy? He asked with a smirk. Well, makes sense. Having someone as amazing as me as your boyfriend, it's normal to be dazed at first. Yi Fan sighed. So it really was real. And this shameless man was still the same as ever. As they walked, she noticed his shoulder getting wet in the rain. Reaching out, she patted it lightly and said, turn the umbrella a bit to your side. But he caught her hand, locking eyes with her. Yi Fan, it's your time to officially enjoy my service now. Don't hesitate, he said coolly. She pulled her hand back hesitantly, giving a small nod. Okay. His touch lingered, warm and tingling, almost like it had burned her skin. They continued down the street, the rain still pouring. She suddenly noticed a nearby vendor putting fruits back into his shop. Without a word, she ran over and returned with a bag of apples. Sang-yeon looked at her, confused. Craving apples? No, she replied. I told you I'd give you a Christmas gift. This is for that. A soft, beautiful smile spread across his face as he nodded, understanding her gesture. Later, they arrived at the hotel where she was staying for work. Sang-yeon booked a room. When the receptionist asked for ID, he handed it over. Yi Fan's eyes locked on the picture. Wasn't that from his college days? Noticing her gaze, he asked, what are you staring at? Oh, nothing, she replied quickly, embarrassed. The receptionist returned the ID after checking it. As they walked toward the room, Sang-yeon handed it to her. Here, take a look as long as you want, he said, full of confidence. This time she didn't hesitate. She took the card from his hand and stared at the photo. It was him from college, those years she had missed. After high school, she'd chosen a different college on purpose. And now, here he was again. Soon they reached Sang-yeon's room. So, I'll head back to my room now, Yi Fan said, turning to leave. Do you have some work to do? He asked. No. Then something else to handle? No. Then why are you going back? He asked seriously. He tapped the card on the door, unlocking it. Let's go inside. She followed him in and sat down on the sofa. Actually, we just started dating. So I was worried stepping into your personal space might make you uncomfortable, she said, a bit uneasy. Sang-yeon leaned in, bending down in front of her face. Well, after touching me all over as you pleased, now you're suddenly being polite? He teased with a smirk. Yi Fan bit her lower lip, unable to reply, because he wasn't entirely wrong. Sensing her discomfort, he quickly changed the topic. What's going on with your job lately? He asked, crossing his arms. He had worked so hard to help her gain some weight, but now she looked pale and thinner again. Sitting beside her, he reached out and brushed her ear. And what happened here? He whispered softly, making her flinch at the closeness. He didn't linger, his fingers brushing past her hair. How did you get hurt? Oh, it's just a scratch from when I visited the site. Nothing serious, she said. Then suddenly she looked at him. Wait, but why did you come here? Didn't I tell you I'd be back tomorrow? I came to pick up my gift, he replied casually. Gift? But the one I got you is still at home, she explained, confused. His eyes dropped to her lips. Could you pass me my phone? She leaned forward toward the table to grab it, but paused. It's not here, she said, turning back to him. In that moment, Sang Yan, now sitting right behind her, suddenly pressed a light kiss to her lips. It was quick, just a brush, but enough. Thanks. Gift received, he said with a smile. Yi Fan's heart pounded. She stood up quickly. I'll go wash the apples, she muttered, escaping toward the kitchen. Behind her, Sang Yan leaned back on the sofa, smirking, maybe at her, maybe at his own sudden boldness. After Yi Fan returned, she quietly ate her apple while Sang Yan continued his dinner in silence. As she looked at him, she realized he never brought up anything from the past. Had he truly let go of everything and only cared about the present now? That answer. Only he knew. Soon, the apple in her hand was finished, and with it, her excuse to stay any longer. Noticing her hesitation, Sang Yan handed her another apple. Eat this one slower, he advised. Don't you want one? She asked. Nope, he replied flatly. How about I eat it for another half an hour? She asked hesitantly. He sighed. Can you please be slower than that? Even with their playful banter and all her efforts to stay longer, it was time for Yi Fan to head back to her room. Before leaving, she turned and said softly, Happy birthday. Thank you, Sang Yan replied with a smile. So, what's your birthday wish? She asked curiously. Not telling you, he said, expression unreadable. Why not? She frowned. He leaned in and gently placed his hand on her head. Because it already came true, he said, looking straight into her eyes. That night, Yi Fan lay in bed, heart still restless, her thoughts circling back to him. Just then, a message popped up from Siqiao. Hey, did you see Sang Yan just posted he has a girlfriend? Are you still going to share an apartment with him? What if his girlfriend causes trouble? The shock and concern in the message were clear. Yi Fan checked. Sure enough, the news was real. She calmly replied, That won't happen, because it's me. Siqiao, clearly confused, sent back. Didn't you say you two weren't interested in each other? Oh, did I? Yi Fan replied. Yes, you did, Siqiao responded, confident. Then maybe. I couldn't resist him, Yi Fan admitted truthfully. The next morning, Yi Fan checked out at the hotel reception. Sang Yan had just arrived and spotted her, but before he could approach, someone blocked his way. It was Cheng. Hey, Sang Yan, I know you're here for Wen Yi Fan, he said, his tone direct. But isn't it inappropriate to interfere with her business trip? Sang Yan didn't respond. He just stared at him. Cheng continued. She's kind, so she won't say anything to you. But that doesn't mean you can keep bothering her like this. You won't win her heart that way. Sang Yan smirked. Is that so? Then he looked to his left. Yi Fan had just walked over. I'm not the one chasing her, he said casually. Besides, we're officially together now. He folded his arms and looked straight at Cheng. Is that clear to you? Cheng froze for a second, clearly shocked. But when Yi Fan didn't deny it, the truth sank in. He quietly brushed past them with a quick excuse, knowing his place now. Sang Yan turned back to Yi Fan, grinning. Did you hear what I said? Yi Fan looked down, her face turning red. Yes. I heard everything, she replied shyly. He wasn't missing a single chance to make their relationship status clear. Later, after dropping Sang Yan off at home, Yi Fan headed straight to the office. She worked through the day, and around 6 o'clock, her phone buzzed. It was a message from him. When are you getting off work? She replied, around 7. A moment later, he sent a voice message. Just so you know, your boyfriend is waiting outside to pick you up. There was no way Yi Fan could focus after that. She quickly wrapped up and headed outside. Once she got in the car, she asked, Why are you here? Are we going somewhere? Sang Yan reached over to fasten her seatbelt. We're going home. Then he glanced up. Don't forget, you still owe me a gift. Yi Fan blinked. But didn't you say you received it yesterday? Can I save this one for next year then? He scoffed. Come on. I only said that to save your face. We both know who actually enjoyed it. She turned to him, challenging. But I think we both did. You looked pretty happy. Sang Yan laughed. Okay, fine. I admit it. I enjoyed it. A rare, honest confession. Quite the contrast to his usual self. After reaching home, Yi Fan handed him the bag with the gift she had originally prepared. He took out the jacket. Jacket? Why this color? He asked, surprised. She replied nervously, I've never seen you wear this color, so I thought it might suit you. But if you don't like it, I can get you something else. I never said I didn't like it, he said firmly. Thanks for the gift. I got a lot of gifts this year. If I had to rank them, this would be second. He smiled. The first one was from yesterday. Yi Fan's mind raced. A lot had happened yesterday. She got him cake, they officially got together, and then That kiss. Which one did he mean? Sang-yeon sighed, ruffled her hair, and gently patted her head. No more guessing. The first one is you. Later that night, after freshening up, Yi Fan was about to go to bed when she heard a knock on the door. She opened it to find Sang-yeon standing there. You're still awake? He asked. Yi Fan nodded. Yeah. Do you need something? Is something wrong? Instead of answering, he pulled her into a hug. Did you apply ointment on your wound? There's no need. It's already scabbed over, she replied. But Sang-yeon didn't look convinced. Did you take care of it after getting soaked in the rain? Of course she hadn't. He sighed heavily. Come to the living room. Bring some ointment. She sat beside him on the couch, and he gently applied the ointment to her neck. She flinched at the sting. Didn't you say it was almost healed? He asked calmly. I thought so. That's why I didn't bother to check, she admitted. Do you always get hurt like this at work? He asked, curious. Not really. Once in a while. I didn't even notice it until someone pointed it out, she said honestly. And it wasn't hurting? He asked, raising an eyebrow. She knew he wouldn't drop it until she gave a straight answer. Yes, it hurts. And now? It's a little better, she replied shyly. Satisfied, he leaned back. All right, just don't get it wet in the shower. Yeah, thank you. Good night then, she said, standing up to return to her room. But just before leaving, she turned back. Then, will you help me put ointment on again tomorrow? She smiled. There was no need to hold back anymore. She had someone to rely on now, someone who cared. Sang-yeon looked at her, his usual confident tone returning. You know where to find me. Come after your shower. A few days later, Yi Fan stood outside her office, waiting for him. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. What are you looking for? It was Sang-yeon. He was wearing the coat she had given him, and he looked so good in it that she couldn't take her eyes off him. Raising a brow, he smirked. What? Are you smitten with your boyfriend? Actually, yes, totally smitten, she replied, this time meeting his gaze with confidence. He reached out, adjusting the scarf around her neck. Then take your time. And keep looking, he said with a smile. Did you come from your bar? She asked. He nodded. You don't have to pick me up every day. You can hang out with your friends. I can go back myself, she said, a little guilty. He scoffed. What fun would I have with them? As they waited to cross the road, Yi Fan hesitated, wondering if holding hands would be too much. Would it be overdoing it? But when the light turned green, he quietly reached out and took her hand, leading the way. She looked at him. Maybe it wasn't as complicated as she was making it. Later, at the dinner table, Yi Fan suggested watching a movie. Sang-yeon, however, said, You should rest instead. I want to watch something, she insisted. Seeing her eagerness, he leaned in with a teasing grin. Are you really interested in the movie? Or is it me? Of course it's you. I want to watch it with you, Yi Fan said, honest and direct. His eyes widened, clearly not expecting that answer. All right, let's watch it together, he said, smiling. As they settled in for the movie night, Yi Fan's phone buzzed. It was her stepsister, complaining that their father's relative, an auntie and uncle, were shameless enough to stay at their house and even ask for money from Yi Fan's mom. She also asked if Yi Fan was coming home for the traditional New Year, saying their mom had been asking about it. Yi Fan's mood shifted immediately, her face turned pale. Sang-yeon noticed. Who was it? Is something serious? No, let's just watch the movie, she said, not wanting to ruin the mood. But he looked at her and asked again, Wen Yi Fan, is something wrong? No. Everything's fine, she said, avoiding his eyes. Sang-yeon didn't press further. Instead, he changed the subject. When are you planning to take time off for New Year? Probably between the 1st and 3rd. But I might have to work if there is an emergency, she replied. Then, are you going home? Probably not. He looked at her. Then I'll figure out when I can come back to see you. Yi Fan stared at him. Last year too, even though he had to visit his own family, he came back early just to spend the holidays with her. Sang-yeon, she said gently. I usually don't celebrate the holidays. You should stay with your family. Visit your relatives. Do you think I enjoy holidays with relatives? He replied flatly. It's exhausting. Yi Fan realized. He understood. He had noticed her shift in mood earlier, knew she didn't want to talk about it, yet stayed close. He always chose to be with her instead of asking too much. And that's why, after so many years, she finally decided to open up. Sang-yeon, she called out softly. He turned to her. Earlier, my stepsister called to ask if I'm coming home. But I don't really get along with my stepfather or his family. She paused. My mom remarried after my dad passed away. There was a silence. When? Sang-yeon asked. Calm and steady. Yi Fan's mind drifted back to that day. She had rushed to the teacher's office the moment she was called, knowing it must be something serious. And just as she feared, the teacher informed her that her mother had called. The message was clear. Her father was in a bad condition, and she needed to get to the hospital. Yi Fan ran to the bus stop, panting. As she waited, her mind spun. How could her father be in a bad state? He had just been doing fine. And during their last visit, he'd even told her he'd be home soon. When the bus arrived, she boarded and sat down, her heart racing, hands fidgeting. Soon after, a boy stepped into the bus. It was Sang-yeon. Without a word, he found her and sat beside her. Why did you leave class? She asked. I didn't feel like going, he replied casually. Thought I'd see what it's like to skip. I see, she said softly, not asking anything more. The boy watched her quietly, studying her expression. After a while, he asked, "Wen Yi Fan, what happened?" She shook her head, not wanting to share. But her eyes gave her away. Tears slipped down as she turned her face away, trying to hide it. Sengyan sighed. Then he took off his sports jacket and gently draped it over her head. Yi Fan froze. "Now I can't see your face anymore," he said calmly. "So feel free." And just like that, she let herself cry, letting it out until her heart slowly calmed. All the while, the boy beside her stayed silent, just being there. When they arrived, she handed his jacket back. "You should put it on, it's cold," she said. "And go back to school. If you skip, the teachers will call your parents and it'll only get worse." He didn't argue. He just nodded and put his jacket back on. "Thank you," she said sincerely. He looked at her for a moment, then added, "Wen Yi Fan, I don't know what happened today, and I'm not good at comforting people. But remember this, I'll always stay with you, no matter what happens." Back then, Yi Fan had taken it as just words meant to comfort her. A casual promise. But years later, she realized how wrong she had been, because Sangyan had kept that promise to this day. Back in the present, she sighed. "Well, it was a long time ago," she said quietly. "Did you live at your stepfather's place after that?" he asked. "At first, yes. But later, I moved to my grandmother's," she replied. "Was she good to you?" he asked, concern in his voice. "She loved me as much as my dad did," Yi Fan said softly. "And your stepsister? We don't really get along. She's been spoiled since childhood. Her father dotes on her, and she throws tantrums whenever things don't go her way. And because I was older, I always had to give in." Hearing that, Sangyan pulled her into his arms, wrapping her in a tight hug. "What?" she asked, looking up with a small smile. "Just wanted to hug you," he said, holding her firmly. He frowned slightly. "Why are you so thin again? I can feel your bones. No one else says that. Only you." "My friend even told me I gained weight," she teased, looking up at him. "That's total nonsense," he said, tightening his hold. Yi Fan burst out laughing at his tone. He reached out to gently caress her cheek. "Yi Fan," he said quietly, "from now on, don't listen to what others say. And you should not be so patient with your stepsister." Then he glanced around. "Do you really think I randomly bought all the stuff in this house? No. I picked every single thing just for you. So anything or anyone that doesn't fit your taste, just let them go." He paused, leaned in, and gave her a quick kiss on the lips, making her heart race. "I must say you have very good taste. Picking your boyfriend," he added smartly, indirectly praising himself. Then his gaze turned sharp as he looked into her eyes. "And one more thing. You deserve the best, understand?" That night, Yi Fan couldn't continue watching the movie. In the end, she returned to her room. It was just too hard to focus with Sangyan sitting beside her, his arm wrapped gently around her. Sitting on the bed, she suddenly remembered the message her sister had sent, the one about their uncle and aunt staying at their place. Just the mention of that uncle used to terrify her. But now, it didn't affect her the same way anymore. Maybe because when Sangyan was near, all the bad feelings seemed to fade away. A few days later, Yi Fan met up with Xiqiao, who looked at her curiously. "Even after you rejected Sangyan back in high school, he never brought it up?" "No, he didn't," Yi Fan replied. "So, he still treats you the same all this time?" Xiqiao asked, surprised. "Yes, he's never changed. He always treats me well," Yi Fan confirmed. Then, with a small smile, she added, "I've never met anyone like him. Someone who treats me so well, and yet still feels so real." Xiqiao raised an eyebrow. "You know, back in high school, I always felt you treated him differently. A lot of boys were after you, but you never responded to anyone." She paused, then added with a knowing smile, "But with Sangyan, you always responded, even got mad at him." Xiqiao recalled one particular day. Yi Fan had been quietly working on her exercises when Sangyan, lazy as ever, was lying on the back seat behind her, doing nothing but making random noises. Yi Fan turned around. "Sangyan, I'm doing my exercise. If you don't stop, I'll ask you to switch seats," she said, a little annoyed. He had looked startled, ruffling his hair before leaning in. Okay, I won't do anything. Just don't get mad, all right?" he said in a low voice. "So," Xiqiao continued, "if it were anyone else, I don't think you'd even say a word. You'd just quietly change your seat. But with him, you show all your emotions, even your anger." She leaned forward, teasing. "So if you get mad at him now, does he still go easy on you like back then?" Yi Fan smiled. "I don't know, I've never gotten mad at him." "Seriously?" Xiqiao blinked. "You two have been living together for almost a year now, and not once? Is he secretly a good-tempered man or something?" Yi Fan shook her head. "It's not that. I just don't have a reason to be mad at him. Honestly, I just want to be nice to him." Xiqiao sighed dramatically. "Yeah, I can see it now. You've completely turned into a lovesick girlfriend, head over heels for her handsome boyfriend." Yi Fan's face turned red with embarrassment. That night, Yi Fan received a call about a car accident in the city. She had to leave immediately to cover the story. As she stepped out of her room, ready to go, Sangyan was already in the hallway, probably having heard her. "It's late. Do you have to head out again for work?" he asked. Yi Fan nodded. "There's been an accident nearby. I need to cover it." He looked uneasy but didn't stop her. "Just be careful." She nodded, then added, "Go back to sleep. I'll be home once it's done." Soon, Yi Fan arrived at the accident site. The report said a drunk driver had crashed into a construction site and needed to be rescued. She planned to do interviews once things settled. Several officers brought out a man responsible for the crash. He kept shouting that he hadn't been drinking. Then, he looked at Yi Fan and called her name. She froze. She didn't move, didn't respond. Just stood still as the officers took him away. Why him? Why does the shadow of my past keep showing up? Why can't it just leave me alone? After finishing her work, she returned home early in the morning. She was shocked to find Sang-yeon awake in the kitchen. It's Saturday. Why didn't you sleep in? She asked, surprised. I will now, he said calmly. I just made some porridge. Eat before you sleep. He placed a bowl on the table. Yi Fan stared at it in a daze. He came over and gently patted her head. Did something happen? You look pale. Without a word, she threw herself into his arms. I'm exhausted, she murmured. So, my hug makes you feel better? He asked softly, holding her close. She nodded. Being near him, it calmed her. This was the life she had yearned for. Eat first, he said, or the porridge will get cold. We can hug more later. You can even sleep in my arms. She looked up at him quietly. He had always been patient. Even when she treated him poorly in the past, he never complained. Now, she just wanted to treat him better. Will life continue like this? Will he always stay? Overwhelmed by those thoughts and feelings, she suddenly reached out, grabbed his collar, and pulled him close. On her tiptoes, she whispered, I want to kiss you. He stared at her, surprised, but of course, he wasn't going to say no. She leaned in and pressed a soft kiss to his lips. After a quick peck, she stepped back, flustered. Then, I'll go to my room now, she said, turning to leave. But he caught her hand and pulled her back. That's not even a kiss. And it's not like it's our first time. Still holding her, he added with mock complaint, poor me. You kissed me, hugged me this morning, but your mind was somewhere else. His hand slid gently behind her neck. And if you're going to make out with me, can you be a little more serious? Her cheeks flushed. Serious? How? He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned in, pulling her face close, and kissed her again. Unlike hers, his kiss wasn't quick. It was slow, deep, savoring her like a flower in bloom. She closed her eyes, fingers gripping his jacket tightly, responding to him fully. Only after he was satisfied did he pull back. He brushed her lips with his thumb. I can't do two things at once, he said. So, do you want me to warm the porridge for you, or... His eyes held a clear heat. Should we continue with the kiss? Yi Fan stared at him, fully understanding what he meant. Maybe because she felt the same. In one swift motion, she wrapped her arms around his neck and pressed her lips to his again. And just like that, their morning kiss continued, longer this time. Later, as they sat for breakfast, Yi Fan couldn't help but glance at the man beside her. More specifically, her eyes lingered on his lips, where a faint bruise could be seen, most likely from their early morning activities. Without thinking, she reached out to gently touch it. Sang-yeon turned to her. What happened? Realizing what she was doing, she quickly pulled her hand back. Oh, nothing. There was just something on your lip, she said hurriedly. He tilted his head. Oh, really? The teasing in his eyes was obvious. Then he reached out, brushing her lips with his thumb. I think there's something on your lips, too. Yi Fan turned even redder, completely flustered. Sang-yeon leaned back in his chair. Go get some sleep. You still have to work later. It was clear he was being considerate, but Yi Fan just kept staring at him, overwhelmed by the quiet affection he showed her. After a moment, he turned her way. How long are you going to keep staring at me? Then he leaned in again. Do you want to continue the kiss by any chance? Before she could answer, he leaned closer and captured her lips once more. When he finally pulled back, both of their breaths had grown warm and uneven. You're such a bad kisser that my lips bruised, he teased, smirking. Yi Fan, embarrassed, started to ask, Then can I... But before she could finish, he pulled her close, cutting her off. But it's all right, he said softly. You just need practice. And with that, he kissed her again. It was obvious what his solution was, one he didn't plan to stop anytime soon. That night, Yi Fan sat in front of the mirror. She could clearly feel her lips were a bit puffy now, but it was fine. After all, she was the one who bruised Sang-yeon's lips first. But the moment she recalled their kiss, she could still feel his breath on her skin. At this rate, sleep was impossible. So, she decided to get him a present before heading out for work again. She stood outside his room and knocked lightly. From inside, his voice came. It's open. As she entered, he said casually, You don't have to knock, you know. You can just come in from now on. But what if you were changing, she asked. So what? He replied, raising a brow. She sat beside him and handed him a box. It was the Valentine's gift she had picked out for him. Can I open it now? He asked. When she nodded, he quickly opened it. Inside was a bracelet with a snowflake charm. He turned to her, puzzled. Why did you pick something so feminine for me? It won't look feminine if you wear it, she said confidently. What does the snowflake mean? He asked curiously. She looked down. It represents the first frost of the year. His eyes widened. He immediately understood. It represented her name. He leaned in with a grin. Then, could you put it on your boyfriend? Of course, he didn't miss a chance to emphasize boyfriend. Okay, sure, she said, reaching out to take the bracelet and fasten it on his wrist. But just then, he caught her hand, noticing the same type of bracelet on hers. You bought matching ones? He asked. She nodded. Then fine. I guess I can accept this feminine gift, he said, smiling. Now, go get your gift from the shelf and check it yourself, he added excitedly. Yi Fan did as he said, pulling out a box from the shelf. Inside was a voice recorder. You said your old one didn't work, right? He said, coming up behind her. You can listen to what's inside it later. She nodded and turned to him. Thank you. For the gift. As Yi Fan turned around, her eyes drifted to an album on the shelf. What's this? She asked, picking it up. It's a graduation album, Sang-yeon replied casually. Can I take a look? She asked with curiosity. Sang-yeon sat on the bed. Well, you could just look at me more closely in person, you know, he said in a teasing tone. Yifan's face flushed at the bold open invitation, but she quickly composed herself and sat beside him. I'll look at you more closely some other time, she mumbled shyly. She flipped open the album. Inside was a photo of Sang-yeon from his university graduation. Are you free on the 8th? He asked suddenly. Not sure. Why? One of my friends is getting married. Come with me if you're free. She nodded and continued looking through the album. What are you staring at? He asked, surprised. Is this Doan Jaksu? She pointed. Yeah. What about him? Sang-yeon asked, curious. He's quite handsome, she said casually. The color drained from Sang-yeon's face. He leaned closer. I didn't hear that clearly. Who's handsome? Yi Fan avoided repeating it, instead watching his jealous expression with amusement. He reached out and pointed to the album. You've been staring at that photo for a while, but not at me, he said, clearly displeased. The next second, he snapped the album shut and took it from her hands. Yi Fan recalled Si Xiao once saying that when Sang-yeon got serious he could look scary, and people wouldn't dare say anything to him. But surprisingly, Yi Fan didn't feel scared at all. In fact, she found it kind of funny. Are you mad? Can I please keep looking? I wasn't done yet, she asked, trying to coax him. Fine. Look, he said reluctantly, handing it back. But he turned away, still sulking. As Yi Fan looked through the album again, she asked, Are you still mad? Not telling. Figure it out yourself, he replied, sulking like a child. She reached out, gently held his hand, and turned him to face her. Don't be like that. I just wanted to take a look at my rival in love. Sang-yeon blinked. What? What are you even saying? I mean, there were rumors about you and Doan Jaksu. They said you two were a famous gay couple back in university. That shut him up instantly. After a moment, he sighed. Aren't you a journalist? How can you trust rumors like that? I am a journalist. And no, I didn't believe them, she clarified, still flipping through the pictures. Suddenly, Sang-yeon leaned in closer, a dangerous glint in his eyes. Well, if you want to know the truth, you can check for yourself whether I'm gay. Yi Fan didn't dare push him further. Quietly, she slipped back to her room. Sitting on her bed, she picked up the recorder he'd gifted her and pressed play. It was filled with short messages, each one asking her to come home safely after work. In that moment, Yi Fan realized he had never forgotten about that night, about the fear from that incident. No matter how late she came home, he was always there, waiting for her. She lay down with a soft smile, heart full. Tonight, she'd seen photos of Sang-yeon she'd never seen before, pieces of his life, chapters she had never been a part of, and she regretted it. She regretted missing it so much. On the 8th, Yi Fan left work early. Sang-yeon had been drinking a little, so she told him she'd come by cab. As she was texting him, Chang approached her. I saw someone looking for you downstairs just a while ago, he said. Yi Fan looked up, surprised. Who was it? Can you describe him? I don't know his name, Chang replied, but he looked to be in his 40s. Didn't seem threatening. But just be careful, okay? Thank you. I'll keep that in mind, Yi Fan said before heading off. Chang stood there for a moment watching her leave. Even though she now belonged to someone else, he still cared for her, and just wanted to see her happy, with the one she truly loved.